is, oh, a subpoena? A subpoena, exactly.
Good morning and welcome to the special workshop meeting, our special budget meeting for Saturday, November 12th, 2016. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. This past week, we lost retired police chief, Ted Brackey. So a moment of silence for Ted. Thank you. Roll call.
One moment. Okay. Trustee Lang,
Here.
Trustee Papantos,
Present.
Trustee Vito,
Here.
Trustee Kruger,
Present.
Trustee Brady,
Here.
Trustee Vogel,
Here.
President Argyris.
Here. Any citizens' concerns and comments?
Nothing.
Okay. Item number 5, discussion of the fiscal year 2017 proposed budget for the Village of Wheeling. And I'll start off with Manager Svandelis.
Thank you. Good morning. A beautiful November morning for government financing. This morning, staff and I are very pleased to present to the board and to the public a surplus draft budget for fiscal year 2017. It's been a long time since we've been able to say that. We've been improving over the last several years, but I believe that this is really the culmination of the last 7-8 years of vision and action from this board and hard work and sacrifice from staff. This budget is proactive. It is a result of policy change, program revision, creation of additional revenue sources, staff reductions, and financial restructuring. As good as this budget is, this is a little bit of a scary time. Last Tuesday, the referendum for the IDOT constitutional amendment passed. We're not quite sure what effect that's going to have on our budget because we're still not quite sure what the definition of transportation project is, but that remains a threat to local municipalities, as does the state's continued push for reduction in LGDF. LGDF is a significant revenue source for us, and any change that the state may impose on us is going to have a significant impact to our operating budget. That is something that we are actively fighting against. That is something that the village president is very actively engaged in with the Northwest Municipal Conference, and is something that we pay attention to every day and are very concerned as veto session comes and our new representatives are sworn in. It's important to talk about those threats because we only have so much control over the budget that you see here, and we feel that we have done, and the we as collective staff and elected officials feel that we've done everything we can do to make sure that this is a responsible budget, that not only that responsibility carries through our discussions today, but throughout the year, but that we are aware of what may be out of our control as we move forward. So it's important to recognize those threats. Other than that, we are very happy with this budget. There are no new programs. There are no new major expenses that weren't represented in previous budgets. All of the expanded level sheets we will go through individually to talk about those additions to the budget. Otherwise, the general fund budget, the operating budgets from each of the departments remain similarly created from previous years. We will go through those in more detail as we go on this morning. I would like to extend, before we move on, a thank you to staff for all the hard work. This is their budget. I get to represent it, but it is their individual efforts that allow me to tell you that this is a surplus budget. So I appreciate their efforts in putting together the budget, but probably more important, the efforts that happen on a daily basis to continue providing services to the residents at a level that you expect, at a level that I expect, and a level that the residents expect without increasing the cost for providing those services. So my thanks and appreciation to staff. This morning, much like in years past, there will be a presentation from Finance Director Monchain, where he will walk through not just the highlights of the budget, but also the larger picture of the impact of the budget this year and projections for future years. Because when we put this budget together, we have to be very aware that we're not just budgeting for fiscal year 2017. We are budgeting for 5 years, 10 years. Our actions today, whether they're in this book or decisions that we make today, impact our future. These decisions compound either positively or negatively. So those things will be discussed with Director Monchain. We'll take a break after his presentation, and then we'll move into the individual department budgets. We have a liaison program that I think has been very successfully implemented, where each department creates a budget and then has an opportunity to sit with their elected official liaison to review line by line what that budget represents. That way we don't have to do it here. Those meetings took place, and I believe President Argyris will ask each of you, the elected officials, to just give a very brief introduction to your experience with that budget and the department that you represent. We will then go through the expanded level sheets. Those are requests that are outside the previously approved budgets. Those are new items, and I'll explain that in a little more detail. And then at the end of our meeting, we will do a final tally. So whatever decisions were made today, how they affect the bottom line as presented currently. And that'll be it.
I just want to echo a couple of things that John had mentioned. First of all, I want to thank John and his staff, all the department heads, and along with the members of staff underneath him, for really seeing the vision of keeping our village financial stability for our village. And we've done this now 2 years in a row. We started it 3 years ago, and we're making it happen. The big reward of that is we haven't changed core services at all. We're getting things done in the community, as there's a huge change of the way the community is looking and what we're doing. Some new faces, some guys have retired after many years and having their career here, and a lot of new guys coming up. I want to thank the board for taking the time, believing in this liaison program, which I believe was always a positive thing, to get a good insight of what every department is all about, and to share those feelings and that insight with the rest of us. So if I have a question regarding anything, I go to that liaison regarding that department versus bothering the department head. And I think we've had good communication doing that. Again, I want to thank everybody for this. We're prepared. There's a lot of uncertainty moving forward. We don't know what the state's doing. There's a meeting with the governor and the leadership this Monday, because coming December 31st, there is no more money of a temporary budget. And that's very worrisome for me and for everybody on this board. So I think we've taken proactive approaches of preparing for the worst. God forbid it happens, that they start taking revenues away from us or programs away from us that can really hurt us. But I think we're in good financial shape to weather that storm. I mean, we did it in the past with the recession. Those were huge hits for us. And moving forward, I see a lot of good economic development, bringing new revenue dollars in here. And like I've always said, you know what, you can't always worry about what the state's doing, even though we do worry about it, but we need to be proactive to make sure we bring in new revenue dollars in here with new businesses here in town. So with that being said, Michael, you can come forward and give us your cartoon proposal here, whatever.
Can everyone see the screen if I leave the lights on?
light.
Is
No.
that your sense of humor,
It's a
Michael?
little light. That's
Is
my
it,
sense of humor.
is it too bright?
Yeah,
It's a little light, I think.
maybe dim a little. There you go.
Is that better? Okay. Now everybody's going to fall asleep, though.
That's what I was
That's
trying to
no problem.
avoid. No offense.
They would fall asleep anyway, but, okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you all for being here and giving up your time to be here. I want to echo what our village manager and village president said in terms of thanking, in particular, the board who volunteers really their time to be here and puts in a lot of time with the departments through the liaison program, spends a lot of time reviewing this document, which is not the most exciting document in the world, but does that without really getting paid for it. And then I'd also like to, in particular, acknowledge all of the other departments who spend a lot of time putting their budgets together every year. It's a lengthy process and it's a team effort, and we appreciate that. And then finally, I want to acknowledge a couple people from my staff that are here today, and that's Angela Peters, who is a long-term employee and a part of our budget team in the finance department. She helps to put together the salary and benefit numbers and the finance department's budget and a lot of other things. And also Brian Smith, our assistant finance director, who does all of those things. If you ever need help with an Excel spreadsheet, he's the guy to go to. He's an expert on it, and his spreadsheets are pretty amazing. And this year in particular, he took a look at our SURF fund and came up with some really creative ideas that will allow us to smooth the amount of money that we contribute to the SURF fund every year so that there's not spikes. And I asked him over and over again to do different iterations of that so that we could use that money in the most efficient way possible. So I think when we got to version 10 or 15 of the spreadsheet, Brian was about ready to quit, but he's still here today, so that's good. So thank you for all that. So I'm going to go through this presentation. If anybody needs a copy of the budget, we have a few extra copies here. Anybody in the audience? And as I've said in the past, there are some slides that I put up here every year. You've seen them before. You're going to be bored by them, but I put them up there because I think the education piece is important for the public, so I won't be spending a lot of time on them. But if you have any questions, as always, just feel to interrupt me. So here we go. I think. Maybe not. Okay. And by the way, this year I tried to throw in some Dilbert cartoon strips just to make this a little bit more interesting. So here's one about the economy, and I'll give you 10 seconds to read that. But I like to talk about the economy just to give us some perspective on the budget each year. So one important indicator, as we've done in the past, of the economy is the GDP, the gross domestic product. And as you can see, back in 2009 and prior to that, GDP was down. But for the last several years, it's been in positive territory. And that's a sign that although the economy is not exactly where we'd like it to be, it's certainly not bad at this point, and it's moving along at a decent pace. This index that I put up here is a new one. I haven't shown this in the past, but this is the Case-Shiller Chicago Home Price Index, another indicator of how the economy is doing. And you can see that between 2007 and 2012, as everybody here knows, home prices were dropping pretty significantly as a result of the Great Recession. The last 3 years, though, there's been a rebound. And again, things are looking up, and that's really kind of the message of today. As Village President Argyris indicated, we've had some difficult budgets in the past, but things are better and in the last couple of years, and we've been able to balance the budget, and it's in part because of the rebound in the economy. And then the S&P 500 tells a similar story. Back in 2008, it was down 38%. The last few years, it's been up. And in 2016, that's as of Friday's close of the stock market, the S&P 500 was up 5.9% this year. That'll become more relevant later when I start to talk about pension funds and their investment returns, because that obviously plays a big role in how our pension funds are doing. And then unemployment is obviously something we want to keep an eye on. Wheeling traditionally has done better than the state of Illinois and the nation as a whole with respect to unemployment. You can look back to October of 2007 which was in recent time the best place we were at in terms of unemployment. We had only 3.5% of our population unemployed, and that amounted to 766 people at that time. As of August of 2016, we're almost back to that point that we were in 2007. We're at 3.8%, which is better than the state of Illinois and the nation, and we have 870 people in Wheeling that are unemployed. And then I have a cartoon at the bottom if you care to read it. So I wanted to, as I have done in the past, spend a couple minutes just talking about the budget for people who are not familiar with it. And I know that this board has been through this process many times, so this is nothing new for any of you. But there may be some people at home that are watching that don't really understand what a municipal budget is all about. And so the budget for 2017 as proposed represents $82 million in expenditures, and it consists of several different funds that all have a specific purpose and oftentimes a specific revenue source. I'm not going to go through each of these, but some of the more important funds are the Water and Sewer Fund, the TIF capital project funds, and the capital projects fund itself. We have trust funds, we have the 911 fund, and so on and so forth. And when you get to the bottom line, literally, you see that we have the general fund budget, which is just shy of $40 million for next year. And the general fund is the budget that gets all of the attention throughout the year. We probably spend 90% of our time during the year talking about the general fund budget and less so about these other funds. The general fund pays for all of the day-to-day operating costs of the village. So that includes police and fire salaries and public works employees' salaries and admin and community development, human services and senior services and so on and so forth. So that's really what we're going to focus our attention on today, but we will cover some of these other funds as well. And so before we start to talk about really the 2017 budget, I wanted to just give you an idea of where we're at for the 2016 projected results. I like this particular comic strip because when our fire chief gives me a hard time, I just can take him out, his salary out of the budget. So this year, our revenues are trending about $632,000 higher than what we budgeted. That's 1.63%. And the reason for that, which is good, obviously, the reason for that is because sales tax revenue is up $439,000 or 4.5% more than what we budgeted. Now, the note at the bottom indicates why that is. We had another one of these one-time only use tax transactions, which amounted to $278,000. Those are always a surprise to us. We can't budget for them. When we get them, it's a gift, but we got another one of those this year. So if you take that out of the equation, our sales tax revenue would be up only 1.6%, which is less than what we've typically seen in the past. And income tax revenue is actually down $424,000, or 10% this year compared to the budget. And when I did the presentation several weeks ago to talk about the results of FY 2015, Trustee Papantos asked me about why income tax revenue is down, and I didn't really have a good answer for her then, and I don't have a good answer for her today either. But what I can tell you is that this is something that doesn't just affect the village of Wheeling. Every community is dealing with these same reductions in income tax revenue, and it's on the agenda, or the radar screen rather, of the Illinois Municipal League, who's now working with the Department of Revenue to figure out why income tax revenue is down, even though, as you've seen, the economy is doing better. So we don't have an answer yet, but it's a problem that we need to figure out, and hopefully the IML will help us do that. Expenditures are trending about $435,000 or 1.12% over budget. And that's due to the fact that salaries are coming in a little bit higher than what we anticipated. We always budget less than 100% of salaries because we anticipate turnover. I think that number is going to come down, and we're going to end up closer to budget by the end of the year. But we also added holiday lights, which was not a budgeted item, and so that also explains some of the reason why we're trending a little bit over budget.
I'd like to highlight that number. As Michael said, but it bears repeating, I think, salaries didn't increase beyond what we expected them to, but as Michael said, we don't budget 100%. So really, we're just banking on retirements. So it's playing the numbers a little bit, but I just want to be clear to the board and to the public that this isn't because of increases in salaries. It's because we didn't realize some of the anticipated retirements for the year.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is where we expect to be at the end of 2016 as of today. As you recall, we had a balanced budget, but now we're estimating that we're going to finish with a slight surplus just under $200,000. And that would result in an ending fund balance of about $14.6 million, which is 37% of annual operating expenditures, well above our 25% policy minimum. And the board has asked in the past for me to explain where our ending fund balances are for each of the funds. So I put that up here. We can come back to this later if you're interested in spending more time on it. But you can see that in every scenario where there is a policy, a financial policy, we are exceeding the minimum. I want to just call attention in particular to the 911 fund, which shows a fund balance much higher than the policy minimum. We anticipate that's going to come down a lot in the next few years because we're getting less 911 cellular phone revenue than we did in the past, and we expect that we're going to continue to get less than we did in the past. And our expenditures are outpacing our revenue, so we're going to get much closer to that 15% number in the future.
And that's something else that the state is looking at on its radar to start making some cuts to, is the telecom tax to us.
The telecom tax has been trending down for a long time because people don't have landlines anymore. A lot of people don't. And we're not getting, it's been down consistently year over year.
Excuse me, Michael?
Yeah.
On the 911 fund, that's the money that we pay on our phone bills or either cell phone or landline bills specifically for 911.
Right.
And on a cell phone bill, the entire amount that you pay does not go to the municipality. Part of it goes to the state also.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct. It goes to the state, and then we get a portion of that. And I think this is something that the fire chief and I have talked about in the past. I think we're getting, Keith, about 62 cents or something like that. 62 cents per cell line.
And then landlines, we're getting 75 cents, aren't we not?
Right.
But that's 100% on landline,
Yeah.
Yes.
and it's 80% on cell phone.
If
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I did the math.
Yeah. So we can always come back to this if anybody is interested, but I'll keep moving. So, as everyone knows, we've struggled prior to 2015 to balance the budget. We had several years of deficit budgets, but 2015 looks like it's going to end with a surplus, and we have a small surplus budgeted for 2016. So there were some really difficult decisions that the board has made in the past few years to eliminate the deficit, and that's paid off not only for the immediate term, but as the village manager indicated, for future budgets as well, because if you balance this year's budget, it makes it easier to balance future budgets as well.
Can I stop you for a moment?
Yep.
Go back to the previous page.
Michael, one quick question.
Go ahead, Ken.
If you got, that surplus that we'll probably end up with at the end of the year, what are we doing with it?
It's a great question. So last year, we ended up with a very large surplus, and the board opted per our financial policy related to surplus, to take $1 million and contribute it to the 3 pension funds. So we have a financial policy that the board approved in January of this year that requires you to at least think about using any surplus for either the pension funds or the SURF fund. You don't have to, but if we do end up this year with a surplus, I'll be back in February or March asking what you want to do with that.
And just getting back to my question, in the previous years that you saw deficits, those years too were where we took dollars from other funds to try to balance a budget. We haven't done that in the last 2 years, and we're not doing it the year coming up. So we were able to fully fund SURF and the insurance liabilities and other funds that we needed to do. So those years of 2012, 2013, 2010, I mean, these were real tough years for us that we were taking from Peter to pay Paul. And I think with our new policies that we've had in place for the last couple of years, we've gotten rewarded with our bond rating because of our positive actions that we're taking. But those were tough years where we took $500,000 here, $1 million here. We didn't fund this 100%. We should have funded it 100%. And it was just like juggling dollars around with other funds. And I'm happy to see the last 2 years and this year moving forward that we're still putting the monies where they need to be. So I just wanted to share that. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And so for the last few years, our fund balance from between 2012 and 2016 has been very stable. We did used to have at one time a higher fund balance. We have drawn down on that as a result of those deficit budgets. But for the last several years, it's been pretty consistent, and that's a great place for us to be. So just our financial report card, I just wanted to share some highlights for the board. Continuing the theme of the idea that we're doing better and things are starting to look up in that regard. We have very strong bond ratings that were recently affirmed by both Fitch and S&P. One thing that I'm particularly proud about is the fact that we have not issued any new tax levy related debt in the last 7 years. Obviously, when you issue debt, that puts pressure on the property tax levy because you have to pay that money back. And so by not issuing any new debt, we've lowered that tax burden a little bit. So that's really important. And in fact, we've paid off some debt and refunded some debt as well. Our general liability and workers' comp claims have been lower than average for the last couple of years. So some of the things that the departments are doing in terms of safety and kind of our proactive way of investigating accidents and claims and reacting to them, I think is beginning to pay off as well. Our health insurance premium increases have been manageable. They've been about 5% for the last few years, and you compare that with, there's a lot of news lately about Obamacare and the premiums going up 25% and so on and so forth, but for the Village of Wheeling, it's been very manageable. The PPO plan this past July went up 7%, the HMO plan went up about 2%, so roughly 5% overall, and that has a lot to do with our participation in the Intergovernmental Personnel Benefit Cooperative, which now includes over 100 communities that pool resources for the purpose of providing health insurance benefits to employees. And it's working, and more communities are joining all the time because of that.
Can I ask you one question?
Uh-huh.
There was a lot of talk in years past regarding the Cadillac tax. Is that still going to be something that we're going to have to worry about in the next year or two?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're still looking at that. The way we're trending right now, we would have to pay the Cadillac tax because we have very generous health insurance plans, which is not unusual for the public sector. But because they cost as much as they do, that would put us in that area where we'd have to pay the tax. Now, as a result of the election, I think all bets are off because we're not really sure what President-elect Trump is going to do with Obamacare.
Right.
So that tax may go away, but we still have to be aware of it.
What kind of dollars are we talking about if it were today?
The last time we looked at it, we would end up having to pay about $50,000 or $60,000 a year in tax. If they don't raise the thresholds and we continue to trend the way that we've been trending.
Okay.
And then finally, our pension funds they're not exactly where we want them to be, and I'll talk about that more in a few minutes, but we have a history of making more than the minimum contribution as determined by our actuary every year, which is something that the bond rating agencies pay a lot of attention to. And our police and fire and IMRF funds are fairly well-funded compared to our neighboring communities, which I'll show you in a minute, but certainly not where we want to be. We'd rather be in the 80 or 90% range in terms of funding. So we have a ways to go. But overall, financially, I think we're doing well.
Michael, is there a mandate when we need to be totally funded?
90% funded, right, in
That's right.
2040?
That's exactly right, 90% by 2040.
Thank you.
So I called this the most important slide you will see today, or conversely, why has it been so difficult to balance the budget over the years? And I think this kind of says it all. So what I did was I compared next year's budget, proposed budget, to the 2007 budget 10 years ago. And I wanted to take a look at our three major sources of revenue. So if you look at sales tax, this to me is really kind of amazing. It says a lot. Our sales tax is projected for next year. We only expect it to be $136,000 more than it was 10 years ago. So that's a 1.33% increase, not for 1 year, but for 10 years. And that's that's a big part of why it's been so difficult to balance our budgets in the last several years. And then you look at income tax. Income tax is a little bit better, but not much. It's projected to be up about $325,000 next year. That's still less than a 10% increase over a 10-year period of time. And what does that mean? Well, it means that since two of our three largest sources of revenue are really basically flat, we've had to rely more on the property tax levy to make up the difference, and the portion that goes to the general fund as a result has been up almost 37% over the last 10 years to make up for what we're not getting from sales and income tax. And so when you look at the bottom line, we've seen a 14% increase in those three major sources of revenue, which together make up 57% of the general fund revenue. And that's a compounded growth rate of only 1.33%, which ironically is the same 1.33% that sales tax is up. It just worked out that way. And expenditures at the same time, though, have grown 2.11%. So you can see that there's a gap there that leads to deficit budgets. The fact that expenditures have only grown 2.11% annually is pretty amazing in and of itself, because we have certain costs that are in the budget that are really beyond our control in many ways. Salary increases are typically, lately have been about 2.5%. As I mentioned before, health insurance is going up 5%. Pension fund contributions have been going up in the 8 to 10% range. And so to be able to manage all that and still have overall expenditures only grow by 2.11% is really quite an accomplishment for this community. Yeah.
You compared 10 years back to 2007,
Mm-hmm.
but 2007, we were also at the top of our game
Yes,
at that point too. So
that's right.
things were pretty successful all
That's right.
around. And until the bottom dropped out.
That's right. Yeah.
If that wasn't, was the trend, was that a big leap in 2007? I can't remember. Or was it, trending upward?
That was where we were trending. There wasn't a huge increase. And in fact, what I did is in 2007, we had another one of these one-time only transactions that I talked about earlier, I took that out of that number so that we had an apples-to-apples comparison. So that was baseline sales tax for that year. And the 2017 number obviously doesn't include any of those one-time transactions either.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah.
Can I just add something to that, too? We talk about the low number, the difference in the last 10 years in sales tax. And I know we all listen to what's going on with Cook County, and this puts us at a major disadvantage based on the location that we're at. When Cook County turns around and raises sales tax percentages, and creates a tax for soda pop, and creates a tax for this, and creates a tax for that, and where we have our people here in our community driving 2 blocks north to go to Lake County and not paying that tax, puts us at a major disadvantage. And I think that's part of the problem as well. Yeah, we might have been on our game back in 2007 because things were a little bit better, but since then, there's been numerous Cook County tax increases that's affected all our retail in this community and in Cook County. But us, we're at a major disadvantage because we're so close to Lake County. And I think that's contributes to that low number as well.
Yep.
Just wanted to share
Absolutely.
that, and I believe that, so.
Hey, Mike, kind of what, going along with what Trustee Lang was saying, do you know what just roughly what the numbers were for sales and income in like 08 and 09 when the bottom fell out? Did they stay at the 10 million level? Or
No,
did
they dropped
they dropped.
substantially.
Like
And
millions,
it's
or-
actually probably something that Brian could look up for us, but yeah, that's 2008 is when we knew we had a major problem because we started to see the numbers coming in each month and they were really bad, and we knew we had to act to avoid a huge deficit at that point.
And that's important to point out. 2008 really is the relevant year. 2007, we talk about as being kind of the boom year, but really it was just the last in line of what was a strong economy. It's 2008 that really caused 2007 to look good, because there really was nothing special about 2007. It's just the end of what was standard at the time.
Right. And then we started talking in 2008 and 2009 about the new normal.
Right.
And
I remember seeing those numbers in the $8 million range, sales tax.
yeah.
It was down.
yeah.
It was down. To answer your question, probably $2 million.
Yeah. I was
Okay.
just curious.
One other thing, Michael, in regards to the Cook County tax that was recently passed, and I believe will go into effect in July of 2017.
I think so.
It's not only going to affect our sales tax in people buying the soft drinks, but also restaurants. So every time you go in and buy a soda from McDonald's, be it diet or regular, you're paying that extra sales tax, and it's based on cup size, not,
Penny an ounce.
yeah, which
Right.
if you buy the large and it's a 32 ounce, it's.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's going to be a problem for me because I get my Diet Coke every day on the way into work, so I'll be paying that tax.
You know, and I think that's what President Argyris said. People can go 2 blocks north and avoid that tax, and it's going to hurt us in that respect.
They can't go to Target and Benny's,
That's
still
true.
in Wheeling, and buy it.
Right.
Or Buc-ee's. That's Lake County, too. So.
Okay. All right. So moving on, one thing I always like to do is
Michael, do we know if there's going to be a no ice penalty? Because the fire chief and I are going to be paying extra.
yeah, they probably will.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well played.
As I've done in the past, I like to compare our community to our neighbors just to determine, give you an idea of whether or not we're operating efficiently. So you've seen these slides in the past. This was something that Mike Morrow from our department put together, and he was unable to be here because he had a planned trip from several months ago and didn't know the budget meeting was going to be today. So in terms of full-time employees, you know, you can compare Wheeling to all of our neighboring communities. The population of each community is listed under their name, and clearly there's some communities here that are a lot larger than us, but there are also some communities that are essentially the same size or slightly smaller. And what you'll see is that with the exception of Niles, we have fewer total employees than any of these other communities. And in fact, the note at the bottom indicates that when you take out the dispatchers that we hired as a result of the intergovernmental agreement that we have with Des Plaines to provide dispatching service to them, we would be lower than Niles. So I think this is a good indication of how we're operating efficiently. And the next slide looks at just full-time sworn police, fire, and public works employees to try to take out of the equation, anybody who may have, like in Niles, a bus system and has a lot of employees because of that, or in our case, dispatching, or libraries or that kind of thing. So I think this is more of a apples to apples comparison. And again, we are the lowest, the average being 222 employees. So I think, again, an indication that we're doing more with less, I guess.
Michael had pointed out in a previous slide that our revenue lists was the most important slide you'll see today. I think these two are right up there with it, because I think it proves to the board and the public, when we say we're doing more with less, this is where you see that come to life. Obviously, there's reason for increased employee counts when you look at Arlington Heights, who is 75,000, but the reality is the service that is provided by municipal government is the same no matter where you go. And yes, you may need more fire and police and public works if you have a higher population, but for the most part, we're doing the same thing that those communities are doing. And I'm very proud of this slide because we say it a lot. We say that we're doing more with less, and you hear it all the time. We reduced our roster by 40 positions over the last 10 years, and I know that just sounds at some point like rhetoric because we've been saying it for so long, but this is where I think you all can look at this slide and the one previous and tell the public that that is a true statement, that there have been no service cuts to our residents and our businesses, yet at the same time we're able to do it with, in some cases, significantly less employees.
But let's be honest, though, and that's great. And I know you're proud of that, and I am as well. But down the road, as new development comes into this community, I mean, we have on the books right now with the town center and with Riva and the new townhomes and everything else, you're looking at approximately 600 new residential units coming into the community. At some point, we're going to have to look at this and say, hey, you know what? We're growing. Our population is, in my opinion, is more than 37,648 today. It's probably closer to 40. And at what point are we going to really have to plan and budget for increased personnel, because it's not going to last. These numbers aren't going to be able to work forever.
I completely agree. I think it still proves efficiency, which I guess,
Totally.
which is my
Totally.
point. So even if
Right.
we do have to add numbers to our total, I think we can legitimately say that we are doing things as efficiently as possible, especially when you consider it's not just, maybe the previous slide, it's not just the additional folks we hired for Des Plaines, it's really the entire dispatch center, because some of our comparable communities there, now Glenview not being one of them, but some of those communities outsource dispatch completely.
Right.
So it's really the entire dispatch center.
Right.
So that number drops substantially from there. I completely agree with you. I think it just shows our efficiency.
Right.
And then we can also take a look at general fund expenditures, and this is based on 2015 information. And again, you will see, as you might expect, with having fewer employees, that we also spend less money than these other communities as well. And the same concept is true with respect to revenue. We're bringing in less revenue than our neighbors are. So I wanted to do something a little bit different this year in terms of focusing on our pension funding challenge. And because I think this is a very important issue for the village going forward, as it is for a lot of other communities. I'll let you read that comic strip. So I wanted to just share some information with you, and this is a look at where we are in terms of our pension funded status for police, fire, and IMRF. We have 3 pension funds, and as of 2015, we were 69% funded in Wheeling, and that was fairly comparable to our neighbors. Now, this is based on Illinois Department of Insurance actuarial reports and IMRF actuarial reports as well. And the reason why that's important is because every community basically hires their own actuary, and every pension fund uses a slightly different set of assumptions. So if you try to compare one pension fund to another, it's difficult to do that when they're using different assumptions. But the state of Illinois uses the same assumptions for every pension fund. So we have our own actuary that we rely on, but we also get an actuarial report from the Illinois Department of Insurance. So this is their set of assumptions. It's really apples to apples, and you can see where we're at. There are a couple communities, few communities here that are a little better funded than we are, but on average, we're right there. Yep.
Wasn't Arlington Heights pretty much behind the previous years in their average? And it looks like they jumped up pretty.
Yeah, I don't recall where they were at last year, but that's possible.
Well, how would they? I mean, how would you jump ahead that?
You would have to have really good investment returns, which is unlikely, because actually I'm going to show that in a minute, or you'd have to make some very large contribution. But I'll have to go back and look at where Arlington Heights was last year, because I don't recall.
Thanks.
And this is based on the same IDOI reports, the total unfunded liabilities, and also the IMRF reports, the total unfunded liabilities for each of these communities. So setting aside for a minute the percentage funded, this is how much money, according to IMRF and IDOI, these communities owe to their pension funds. And you can see Wheeling owes about $58 million, but there's a number of communities that owe a lot more. Now, it's true that they have more employees, and so it would make sense that they would owe more to their pension funds, but not all of them do. And the best funded community at this point is Buffalo Grove, which still owes $46.5 million to their pension funds. The average of all of these communities is about $89 million. So although we have a lot of work to do, I guess the message here is it could be a lot worse. And so I wanted to also talk for the first time this year, I haven't done this in the past, about investment return assumptions and actual results, and I'll let you read the Dilbert strip there. And this is important because the investment return assumption that the pension funds use has a direct relationship with how much money the village contributes to those funds each year. And so the higher the investment return assumption, the lower the amount that we contribute to our fund each year. And the lower the amount that we show as being owed to the pension funds as well. So you'll see here that there are a number of communities that have lower investment return assumptions, and in this case, lower is better, higher is not. So Northbrook is at 8%. They're assuming that they're going to earn 8% on their pension fund investments every year, going into the future, which is not realistic based on recent history in terms of how the stock market has done and so forth. What that means for Northbrook is they don't have to contribute as much to their pension funds because they're banking on the fact that they're going to make a lot of money in investment returns. Wheeling is at 7.5% for police and fire, and IMRF also uses 7.5%, but we have no control over what IMRF does. We do have control over police and fire.
But realistically, that number should come down.
that number needs to come down.
It does.
And it's a big concern of mine. It needs to be a lot lower. The average of all of these communities is 7.25%, and I would tell you that that's still too high. And I put a note at the bottom that, Warren Buffett, for his pension plan, Berkshire Hathaway uses 6.5%.
It's probably more realistic.
Which is more realistic. We're also restricted in Illinois in how we can invest pension money. We're limited to putting 55% of the money in the stock market and 45% in fixed income. So with those limitations, it's even more difficult to earn anything around 7.25, 7.5.
Michael, I've heard that for a number of years. So how do we lower it and change that expectation so that we're more realistic and we can reach that mandate of 90% funding by 2040?
I'm glad you asked, and I'm going to address that right
Sorry.
now. No, that's okay. Before I get to that, I wanted to kind of do a reality check here, and this is 2015 average investment returns for all of these communities for just police and fire. And you'll see, if we went back to that slide that I showed earlier about the S&P 500, the S&P 500 for 2015 was down 0.73%. Our police and fire pension fund investments combined were up 0.46%, so that's good. And it's not too out of line with what some of these other communities saw, but some of them were down substantially. Northbrook at almost 5% for the year. Clearly, they're not earning, this is only 1 year, but clearly they're not earning 7.5 or 8%. And you can tell that by looking at the note at the bottom. For the last 10 years, the Wheeling pension funds, fire has earned just under 6%, police a little bit better, and even IMRF, which doesn't have the investment restrictions that our pension funds do, was only able to earn about 6.5%. So I think that's the trend going forward. It's going to be lower investment returns, and that's why it's so important that we address the investment return assumption. When you think about a community like Northbrook that saw a 4.8% loss, they were assuming they were going to earn 8%. So they missed it by 13% combined, And now the next year, 2016, they're assuming they're going to earn 8% again. So in order to make up for this 1 year, they really need to earn 21%, which is, completely unrealistic.
Michael,
Yeah.
what's Niles doing that they,
I was afraid somebody was going to ask me that question, so you win the prize. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I would have to do some research, but a lot of these pension funds have different investment managers and they have different approaches. And some years they have good years and some years they have bad years. So this may be not any magic. It may be just that they had a good
anomaly?
year. Yeah, exactly, an anomaly. But I haven't gone so far as to see how they're investing their funds. That would be probably the next step. But they may have just, there was a Dilbert strip earlier that talked about, getting lucky. Sometimes you just get lucky.
Sure.
And this is where investment return assumption makes a big difference because, by the way, as a result of the implementation of GASB 68, which is a new accounting standard related to pension funds, we now have a lot of pension information that we never used to have access to. So that's why I was able to take a look at at some of these other communities and how they're doing with their investment returns. We never used to be able to do that. So we were kind of in the dark, but now we're able to do that. And one of the other benefits of GASB 68 is right in the CAFR, it now tells us what the impact is of the investment return assumption we use. So you'll see in the first column, this is just police and fire, but when we assume that we're going to earn 7.5%, that the bottom line is it means that we owe, or we're telling the world that we owe $49 million because we think we're going to earn 7.5% every year going forward. Look at the second column. If we were to raise that to 8.5%, and be really optimistic about our future investments, it would mean that we would only owe $34 million. And if we were to lower the assumption to 6.5% and become much more conservative, it would cause us to then show a net pension liability of over $68 million, simply because we're assuming we're not going to earn as much in the future. So it makes a huge difference in that regard.
Michael,
Yeah.
who manages our investments?
Great question. So the fire pension, the fire pension fund and police pension fund have professional investment managers. For fire, it's a firm named Sawyer Faldudo. They've been around for a long time. They manage a lot of pension funds in the Chicago area. And for the police pension fund, it's MB Financial, which also has a number of pension funds that they manage as well, and they're professional managers. The pension, I sit on both of the pension boards, and the pension boards do a really good job of, studying this and trying to take a look at how we're doing in terms of our investments and make improvements wherever we can, but there are certain limitations that we have according to state statute.
But you're confident with these companies that they're doing the best?
Yeah, they're professionals and they do a good job,
Michael,
I'm sorry. Michael, the policy we put in place in January, where any given year that we have a surplus, and it's a decision of the board to take a percentage of that surplus and contribute to the police and fire pension, only helps our assumptions of our rate of return.
Right.
So we can be proactive and keep that policy in place, because if we even go to 6.5 and we have a good year and you kick in $1 million, that's going to add up that percentage of return for us that we're actually contributing and doing with no risk. Unlike dealing with the stock market, like you said, and betting on the, stuff. I'm sorry, Mary, you had something?
That was trustee
Mary.
Kruger.
Oh, sorry.
Michael, on the fund managers that we use, are they under contract that we have to use them for an extended period of time and we can change them, or can we change them
We can change them whenever we want.
anytime we wish, right?
Right.
And is it RFP? How do you do that?
How do we, if we decided, if one of the pension funds decided tomorrow that they wanted to change managers, they would just give notice to the manager that we're switching. And in fact, the fire pension fund did that fairly recently when they hired Sawyer Faldudo after having a different investment program for a number of years.
Thank you.
How about IMAT? How did that affect everybody?
How did what?
The IMAT fund.
IMAT? None of these pension funds were invested in IMAT. Well, at least our pension funds were not invested in IMAT, so there was no impact there.
But our investments in our reserve funds, some of that money was invested there, wasn't it?
Yes, and, IMAT is continuing to work to try to recover the monies. Brian, do you remember exactly how much we still have owed to us? It's 170,000 or so that we're still hoping to get. We're not going to get all of it back,
Right.
but we're hoping to get about 50% or 45% of that.
There's a conference call with the attorneys and all the municipality representatives from the area that were affected by IMET about every 6 weeks that I participate in and Michael is in. So this is not something that we're dropping, but as Michael said, I don't think we're ever going to recover 100%, but it is something that we collectively are aggressively pursuing. There was a lawsuit, and there were collection proceedings and liquidation of assets and all that, and that's where our money is coming from now.
Okay.
I think the expectation was 80%.
Okay.
So I've just been handed a note, and this goes back to Trustee Lang's question about 2008. And that year, our home rule sales tax was down 8%. Regular municipal sales tax was down 12%. And income tax was actually up that year, 7%. But the following year, we saw a 19% drop in home rule sales tax and a 14% drop in our share of the state sales tax. So those were huge drop-offs.
And yet costs continue to go up.
Oh, yeah.
Right, right. So getting back to Trustee Papanto's question about what can we do with respect to these pension funding issues, and these are just some ideas. You know, we don't obviously need to make a decision today, but it's just something to think about in the future. And one option is to do a one-time levy increase, and I'll talk about that some more in a minute, on top of our planned increase in order to allow us to drop our investment rate assumption. And I'll show some more detail about that in a minute. Another idea is to do a 0.25% home rule sales tax increase and devote that money, earmark that money specifically to the pension funds. And one thought is, you know, it could even have a sunset where, you know, if we got to 90%, 85% or 90% funding in our pension funds, we could eliminate that home rule sales tax, that 0.25%. The city of Chicago just implemented a water tax, and they did it specifically for pension funding purposes. So that's not something we've done in the past. Woodridge has a water tax as well. Couple of examples. I don't know that they actually dedicate that money to their pension funds, but there are communities that tax water. We could consider a food and beverage tax increase, and there's probably other ideas too that are not listed here that we could look at as options for increasing our contributions to the pension
And
funds.
by way of getting ahead of this, we know that none of those are good options. We know that none of those are things that the board may want to pursue, but it was also necessary to bring up that our investment assumption is high. I mean, it's only a little 0.25 point above average and somewhat in line with everyone else's, but it is a problem. This is a matter of risk, that at some point we're going to need to pay this money, and the higher our investment expectation is and the higher it is away from reality, the bigger of a problem that presents, and at some point we're going to need to deal with that. So we know that none of these are attractive options, and as Michael said, we're not asking for you to do any of those today. It is something that we want to look at in the coming year to see what we can do, but we also wanted to bring it to your attention because it's a significant issue.
What year does it, are we supposed to be fully funded?
40.
By 2040, as it stands right now, we're supposed to be 90% funded. Now, there's a feeling that the state's going to push that back at some point because they just did that for the city of Chicago. They pushed it back to 2055.
If we continue the way we're doing, paying it off as we can, you think we'll make it without any extra taxes?
Well,
No.
it's only if we earn that 7.5%, you know, and which I don't think is going to happen.
I think one of the things they're looking at with reform is doing amortization as well. And coming up with a better formula to get closer to 90% or 100% funded on the pensions. That's something they're looking at, and they should be looking at. Because realistically, you saw Niles at 52%. There's no way they're going to make 90%. And for us, it's going to be hard as well because the assumptions are too high. They're not realistic.
Yeah.
Trustee Vogel had something real quick. Hold on.
Go ahead, Ray was.
Thanks.
Okay.
What about you know, you had the one-time levy, but what about a slight property tax increase year to year that accounts for, you know, that just adds to the payoff?
Yeah, that's my next slide. So you're jumping ahead of me, but that's a great thought. So let me put that up here. This is the impact.
I'm trying to speed this along.
I know you are. And I'm
Well, let's stop.
long-winded.
1 second. Trustee Vogel.
Okay, sorry.
But no, that was my question also. Why could we just put a 0.5% on from now until 20 years?
Here's what you could do. So if we were to drop the assumption for the police and fire pension funds to 7.25%, you can see what the added contribution would be to each of those funds. And what the total is in bold there would be $358,000 more than what we're planning on contributing next year. And what the impact to the levy would be a one-time increase of just over 2.5%, which it would generate the $358,000. It would be $358,000 that comes in every year, so it's a permanent increase to the levy, but it becomes then part of the base levy. So you really only have to do it once in that sense. And the same thing applies to the other options. If we went to 7% as a rate assumption, return assumption, it would have an impact of just over 5% to the levy. And dropping to 6.75% requires us to contribute another 1.1 million to the two pension funds, and requires an 8% increase in the levy. And these are increases above what we have budgeted as an increase that's necessary just to pay for the increase in operating costs.
So in order to capture the compounded value of the increase, you would need to do it in 1 year versus the 0.25% annually dedicated. You'd need to do a one-time 2.56, 5.19, whatever, and capture the compounding.
Right. Does that answer the question?
But again, I think we're putting ourselves ahead of the game here a little bit, and I'll tell you why. But the uncertainty, again, with the state of Illinois and the threat of taking income tax money away from us, revenue sources away from us, I think we really need to wait and see before we implement any new financial programs to put in place to take care of a problem that we know we have to 2040 to worry about, where we may have an immediate problem coming up next year. So I think we really got to do what we're doing, balancing the budget, keeping our core services in place, but to add more taxes to take care of pensions or do this or do that, I think we may have a bigger problem. We're losing half. You saw the income tax number. It's $3.8 million. They're talking about taking half of that away. How do we make up $1.7, $1.8 million? These are things that we really, we lose sleep over. And we're fighting it with the municipal leagues, all the municipal leagues in the state. And hopefully these guys come up with a solution here. This way we'll know where we're at. And hopefully they don't. And then we can think of that. I just need to share that because this is an ongoing problem. And the threat is there.
I have a question. The other aspect of this discussion is the life expectancy tables. Have those been adjusted? I know we talked about this and I don't know the answer.
The fire chief's going to live to 125, and that was the last table.
Yes, he is.
Remember that?
Yes, the mortality tables were adjusted. We just actually hired a new actuary for both the police and fire pension funds, and they use a different mortality table than what we've used in the past.
Okay.
But that plays a big role in what your contribution
time,
has to
yeah.
be too. Okay, so just very quickly here, for the 2017 budget, it includes all of the core services that the manager referenced earlier. And it also includes $10.2 million in capital improvement projects, a lot of money for the street program, and for all of these other things that you see on this list. The reason this is important to point out is because it's obviously a significant investment in our infrastructure, but also because this is all paid for with pay-as-you-go money. So we're not borrowing any money to pay for these projects, and that's a significant.
Can you repeat that,
Michael?
Michael? Wait a minute. Can you repeat that again?
Sure.
I love hearing that. That's fine.
We have dedicated sources of revenue to pay for all of these capital improvement projects, which means that we don't have to borrow to pay for streets or water main improvements or anything like that.
So no new bond money.
Right.
That's the headline.
That's the headline. Thank you.
And Michael, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
On the lighting project for capital improvements, Dundee Road lighting,
Right.
a lot of that was paid by grant money?
Yeah, and this is our share.
And so, and I would like to reiterate that the project was done because of grant money and that we will continue to work towards that to help our residents, but at the same time save money.
Absolutely.
80% of that project was grant.
Right.
Okay. We can come back to this later too, but included in the budget are the expanded level requests that were approved by the village manager. There's a few items here that total about $86,000, $87,000, and we'll talk about that more later. And then also included in the budget is a full SURF contribution again this year I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the SURF because we've talked about it a lot in the past, but it includes over 290 assets that have a total replacement value of over $16.5 million. The slide that I put up earlier showing the fund balances in each fund showed that we had a balance in the SURF fund of about $4.5 million. And Trustee Papanto sent us an email and asked a question about this. I don't know if you want to ask it now.
I basically just want to have you tell everybody who's listening what expenses we paid out of SURF just last year on public safety alone, just public safety.
Right. And do you have that number with you?
Yes, it was 2.4 million. That includes a ladder truck, an engine, 2 ambulances, and 6 squad cars.
So when you think about the fact that we have $4.5 million in the fund, but our replacement value is $16.5 million, and just in the last year or two we spent 2.4, you can see how quickly it goes.
And we did not have to take any debt out for public safety whatsoever.
That's right. That was again, like we talked about with the CIP, pay-as-you-go money.
Great.
If we had to borrow for that public safety equipment because we didn't have a SURF fund, we would be seeing these spikes in the tax levy as a result. And then I've put this slide up here before. GASB 45 reflects the amount of money that we have to pay for other post-employment benefits, and specifically that's related to retiree health insurance. This is a cost that the Village of Wheeling has that's greatly in excess, as you'll see, of what other communities are struggling with, and that's because of the fact that prior to 1981, we had a benefit that for employees that if you started working here before 81 and retired with a certain number of years of service, you were entitled to employer-paid health insurance basically for the rest of your life. And so we have 74 retirees, pre-81 retirees that are still receiving that benefit. We have 5, this also includes PSEBA, so that's the Public Safety, what does it stand for?
Employer
Employer Benefit Act, thank you. And that act says that basically says that if you're a police officer, firefighter injured in the line of duty responding to an emergency, and you're disabled and you can no longer work, you get employer-paid health insurance for the rest of your life. So we have 5 of those cases. And so what that means is that we have a liability for these costs of just over $18 million. Now, last year, it was about 19.4, so now it's $1 million less, and this will eventually come down to a more manageable number because I don't know how to say this.
Don't say it.
Please don't say it.
Michael, I can say it. My mother happens to be one of those 74, and as you age, you
So I'm not going to go there, but
age
you know
out.
what I mean. Eventually, there won't be as many retirees on this plan, and those costs will come down. But this is something that we struggle with from year to year, and the note that I put up there is next year we have $688,000 budgeted just for this cost. That's an expense that most communities really don't have. A lot of these other communities have an implicit rate subsidy, which means that they're subsidizing basically the cost of having Medicare-related retirees on their plan, but it's not a explicit rate subsidy like we have.
Hey, Michael?
Yeah.
Considering most of these people obviously were working in the village, well, all of them were working in the village 35 years ago. Most of them are going to be Medicare eligible.
Yes.
Have we ever considered buyouts to get out of this? Because all they're going to need is a supplement. And if you give them a big bag of cash to stop this, they might take it.
Right. It's a great thought. And no, the answer is no, we have not considered that. Those employees that are Medicare eligible, or retirees, I should say, that are Medicare eligible, what we're essentially providing them with is a supplemental policy.
Okay.
So they're not on our full,
Number one.
full policy that active employees are on. They're on the equivalent of a supplemental.
All right.
but we have never approached the idea of a buyout before. So that's something, I suppose we could consider. I'm not sure how many people would be interested in that, but I guess you don't know till you ask the question.
Yeah, right.
And then there are a number of things, we can come back to this later, that are not included in the budget. These are expanded level requests that the village manager did not approve, which we'll talk about later. They total $426,000. And then every year we talk about overtime. I think the departments have done a great job of managing overtime, and for the most part, that's police, fire, and public works. And as you'll see, going back to 2013, it's essentially been flat. There really hasn't been much of an increase in overtime. The budget also includes a 3.03% because of rounding, or not, I guess in this case, not rounding. Water rate increase 22 cents per 1,000 gallons. That's necessary to continue our proactive capital improvement program. That would cost the average resident about $18.50 next year. And our water sales have been fairly consistent for the last several years, which is great because for the years prior to 2010, they were dropping every year as people used less water and bought more efficient appliances and things like that. So it seems to have stabilized at about 1.2 billion gallons of water a year. And we have a new fund that we implemented that you're all aware of, the Stormwater Fund. We implemented a fee in early 2016 at $2 per ERU. That was based on a management plan that was done that identified about $48 million in projects that need to be addressed over the next several years. It currently generates about $610,000 annually in revenue. And when we implemented the fee, we talked about starting low and incrementally increasing it over time so that we would have the money necessary to do the $48 million in projects. So the budget includes a proposed 25-cent increase in the fee, which would generate about another $77,000 a year in revenue. And there are projects budgeted in the CIP that are already underway using Stormwater Fund money. So we could talk about that more later as well.
Michael, according to our budget documents, we spend nearly $800,000 a year just to maintain the system?
That's correct. That was identified in the study.
So at this point, we're taking that money out of a different fund, the difference?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We are.
Sewer and water.
Water and sewer is paying the majority of that. And we have a policy, a stormwater fund policy that says that only 25% of the money that comes from the fee can be used for operating costs. The other 75% has to go to capital costs.
And when will we start the first project?
We have, the CIP has projects budgeted for 2017.
The first project is flood relief on South Wheeling Road, and that project is being, it's in its pre-engineering phase right now. So we're hoping to get that project underway. And Mark, am I correct, construction potentially in 2018? I know we want to do engineering in 2017. Is that the right timeline?
Potentially, yes, or possibly the end of 2017.
Question? Are there any of these projects that are eligible for any grant money that are offered for stormwater improvement? Are we going after those when we can?
Our consultant is looking into that. I don't think that that's going to be a possibility, but MWRD has started to fund stormwater projects like the one that we're proposing, and so we are looking into that.
It'd be a good offset.
No question about it.
And that's a great question that pertains to all projects. We go after funding for anything and everything that we could get assistance with, even if that's equipment purchases. Anywhere there's money available, we're going to chase it.
Excellent.
Do we do a comparison of other communities for stormwater fund fees?
Yes, we did it when we implemented the fee, and there are a number of other communities that are much higher than we are.
I mean, I happen to know that Buffalo Grove is $6, which is a whole lot more than what we're paying, and I want to make sure our residents know that we are going carefully on this.
Right, we took an approach of starting low in order to limit the impact on the residents and the businesses. And so that's why we started at $2.
If memory recalls, are we the lowest? I remember the comparison.
I think we
and
probably are.
I believe we are the lowest.
We are.
Okay, and then just real briefly, I want to just address the tax levy. And again, I wanted to do a comparison here between the 2004 levy and the proposed 2017 levy, because I think this is interesting to see how the levy's changed over the years. And so back in 2004, about 57% of the levy, $4.6 million, went to the general fund. That's actually dropped in 2017. It's gone up in terms of dollars, but in terms of percentage, it's dropped. Now only 51% of the levy goes to the general fund, and the reason for that is because essentially more money is going to the pension funds. You know, on that second row, or I guess it's the third row, where it talks about debt, back in 2004, 19% of the levy went to pay for debt, and the debt payments were about $1.5 million a year. Now that's dropped to 12% of our levy. Only 12% goes to pay for debt. It's gone up a little bit in terms of dollars, but there really hasn't been much of a change. And so even though we issued a significant amount of debt a few years ago for public buildings and so forth, it hasn't had a huge impact on the tax levy. But what has gone up significantly is the amount of money that we're contributing to the 3 pension funds. And back in 2004, and I used 2004 because that was the first year that we made a contribution to the fire pension fund. But back in 2004, we contributed only $1.9 million to the 3 pension funds, or 24% of the total levy. That's now grown to $5.3 million, or 36% of the total levy. So that gives you an idea of, again, why it's been difficult to balance the general fund budget. And so you can see the total levy and how that's grown. But 52% of the quote-unquote new revenue is now going to the 3 pension funds.
And again, that's why it's so important. The actuaries are numbers guys. And for many years, their contributions weren't made because we were going to be overfunded. And then 2004, the Brain Trust got together and say, wait a minute, the actuaries are wrong, and we're going to be in trouble here. That's why policy has to be maintained in place to be consistent regarding pension contributions, regardless what the actuaries are saying, because it has to be. And that's why we have the debt today.
And this slide just shows where your property taxes go. 12.95% goes to the Village of Wheeling for all of the services that the village provides. And, you know, again, the majority goes to the school districts, over 67%. And Village Manager Svandilis asked me to just talk, again, I'm trying to be as brief as possible here, about the tax levy and assessments and tax burden and how that process works. And about 5 years ago, I did a presentation to the board showing an example of how tax levies work. And so we thought we would trot that out again today and try to educate the public a little bit on how this process works. So I came up with an example, and it's a community called the Village of Svandilis.
It's a great community.
It's an awesome community.
It's like Fantasyland.
Is it in Greece or Illinois?
Sadly.
And I made several assumptions here for the purpose of this example. So for instance, the Village of Svandilisville consists of 4 homes and 2 businesses. It's a small but humble community. And it provides all of the services that you would expect: police, fire, public works, and so on and so forth. The annual budget for Svan-Delisville is only $100,000, just to keep things simple here. And the only source of revenue is property tax revenue. So the village levies $100,000 in property taxes each year. There are no other taxing districts, again, to keep this as simple as possible. And the village has an excellent village manager named John. And don't ask me why I picked the Monopoly guy. John doesn't look like him.
I like the mustache.
And then finally, everyone in Svan-Delis is a White Sox fan. So
That wasn't on my copy of the slides.
So you can see that this is a perfect community. So the first year that Svan-Delisville is ever in existence, again, we have the 4 homes and the 2 businesses, and the village levies $100,000. And the way that breaks down is that the 4 homeowners each end up paying $10,000 in property taxes, and the 2 businesses pay $30,000 each, and the village collects $100,000 to pay for the services it provides. But in year 2, there's a recession, and there's also a reassessment. So all of the properties are reassessed 20% lower, except for homeowner 1, whose assessment only drops 10%, and that's because homeowner 1 put in a swimming pool during the year, and so they didn't get as much of a reduction as everybody else. But they did it with a permit, so that's a good thing. The village decides in year 2 to levy $100,000, again, no increase in the levy because of the recession. But the impact of the reassessment is significant because everyone except homeowner 1's assessment drops 20%. Homeowner 1 actually ends up paying more in taxes than everybody else. So their bill goes from $10,000 to $11,111, and everybody else sees a little bit of a reduction. But the bottom line is the same. Regardless of the reassessment, because the village only levied $100,000, that's all the village collects. Doesn't matter that some people are paying more, some people are paying less. What matters is how much the village asked for from the taxpayers. And we're assuming this is a home rule community too, by the way. Now, this second scenario is a little bit different. In year 1, we have the same situation, but in year 2, there's a recession, and business number 2 actually closes. And what that results in is a significant shift in tax burden. So the village is still levying the same $100,000 as it did before, but look at the impact that this has to the 4 homeowners and the 1 remaining business that are left to pay the $100,000 that the village is asking for. Now, instead of paying $10,000, each homeowner has to pay over $14,000. Their tax bill goes up 43%, and business 1, takes a hit of almost $13,000. So, what this illustrates is really how important businesses are to reducing the tax burden for everybody. You lose a business and everybody pays. So what happens when that, business goes out of business and you have a shift like that? Well, all of you are going to hear from angry residents who want to know, why in a recession is my tax bill going up? Well, the village didn't collect anything more than they did the prior year, but because of this shift of burden, everybody has to pay a little bit more. And the finance director gets a lot of calls too, but nobody feels sorry for him, so.
Why would we? Because he's a Sox fan, that's right.
So what does this prove? Well, again, a shift in tax burden occurs whenever properties are reassessed, and that can sometimes produce very different results where you have the tax burden shifting from businesses to residents, and it can happen the other way too.
It doesn't pay to be a Sox fan.
And then another important note is the village can approve a 0% tax increase, and yet individuals and businesses may end up paying more to the village because of that shift. certain individuals, not overall, but certain individuals or businesses may end up paying more. And then the other thing is that economic development is very important, because when villages lose businesses, it increases the tax burden for everybody. So I put here John Molan, if he can thank me later for that comment. So. And again, the assessed value of a home or business can go down, and still the amount that individual taxpayers pay can go up. And most importantly, unlike private businesses, municipalities really can only do so much to cut services, because we still have to provide police, even though we lost a business, hypothetically, we still have to provide police and fire and public works. Unlike a private business that, makes toasters, if suddenly they're not selling toasters because people don't need toasters, they may shut down a production line or something like that and let people go. But we don't have the ability to do that. And in fact, in a recession, there's often a greater demand for public services, from police and fire and human services and so forth, than there would be otherwise. So we're very limited in that regard.
Michael, conversely to that, an assessed value for a home can go up, but the tax liability can still go down if more business has been created and more building occurs throughout, and which is why it's so important that our projects go forward here.
That's right. That's absolutely.
Also proves that you should be a Cub fan.
Yes.
We haven't had this scenario, this example or explanation in the budget for the last couple of years, because it does focus on a recession. But we think that it does illustrate really how your tax bill works. And that, I was speaking with Trustee Vito, and he had asked, we really need to make an effort to explain a little bit more about how the tax bill works. And this seemed to be the most basic explanation to correct the most common misconception, which is that your property tax bill for the village is a percentage of the value of your home. And that really isn't the case. There is an amount, the levy, that the municipality needs in order to provide services, and that amount and its distribution is what impacts your tax bill. And I hope that's the takeaway that everyone got here. We obviously tried to dumb it down and make it a little entertaining, but I think the point is well illustrated, that it really does come down to economic development. It really does come down to growth and retention in order for us to keep the tax bills down, because the levy doesn't go down. The levy is going to go up, whether that's because of additional expenses or whether it's to capture growth. So I hope that point was made.
That scenario may read well on the website, too, the folks who haven't seen this meeting. And
we can put that together as in a flyer format and put that on the website, sure.
Sure. Okay, and then since the proposed budget was sent to the board, there were 3 items that, we realized needed to be added to the budget, so they're not reflected in the document that you have in front of you. And we can talk about those in a little bit more detail later. And that is it.
Well, why don't we take a break? How's that, for about 15 minutes? All right, we'll come back.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we're back. John?
Thank you. As I stated earlier, the budget process really is a year-long process. And the way we get to the numbers before you today begins in about in about May, where we first start talking about the next fiscal year. The department heads, along with their team, put together the first draft that is then presented to myself and Director Monchain, and a number of iterations go back and forth. And the purpose of that is to go through the operating expenses and make sure that every line item is as accurate as it can be based on basically a regression analysis of what has been spent in years past, but also with a lengthy discussion about what is needed for the future, because sometimes through efforts of efficiencies and just time, things change. So there is a lot of work that goes into each and every account that you see in each and every department. And that process then leads us to a final draft budget that all of you have seen and reviewed yourselves. So I am going to hand it over to President Argyris so he can introduce each of the liaisons and the department budgets that they represent.
Okay, I'm going to start off with Public Works and Trustee Vogel, who's liaison to Public Works, along with Director Janik. And Dave, I know you met with Mark, and maybe you want to have a few comments regarding his portion of the budget.
Yes, we did. I met with Mark and Christine and Michael and went through the budget, and they explained quite a bit to me that I wasn't aware of certain expense items, what went into them. And as we went through, you could see that actually their budget is flat, maybe a little bit down dollar-wise if you pull out the fixed costs that they have, salaries and benefits. So there's really no increase. There's actually, I think there's a slight decrease, like I said, if you pull those items out. But Mark and his staff did a great job of moving expenses around to become more efficient. And he's talked about that in the past with us. And I think they're doing an excellent job. And looking forward to the next budget year, they're attempting to do the same thing, getting their trained staff to do a lot more of the real street work and transferring some of the other work to outside consultants at a lower price. So I think we're getting more bang for the buck, and it looks like fiscal 17 is going to be the same way. So congratulations. I think you guys did a great job. They've got a couple expanded items that I understand we'll be talking about later, and we can discuss those at that time. But thank you for the information you passed on to me, and thanks for a good job you did.
Good. Mark, you want to add anything?
I just want to say the Public Works employees, we made some changes this year, as you all know, and so far it's been very successful, and it's really been their hard work as well as the supervision by my superintendents who have all been on board, and I appreciate it. That's it.
Questions from the board? Anybody? Well, it's been an interesting year for your department. I know you've outsourced a lot of stuff. How does that working out for you?
So far, it appears to be working really well. We've been within our budget, as Trustee Vogel said. We've gotten a lot of the work done. I think you've seen us out more. Statistically, we have done a lot more than we typically do by this time of the year. I think it's been successful.
Okay.
This is probably an appropriate time to mention that as I speak, they are installing the signal at Community Boulevard. One leg is already in. That is a project that really, it obviously touches Public Works, but really all departments. 10 years in the making, and it's happening right now, and something we should certainly be proud of.
Thanks. Expanded items? I didn't see any. Are there?
We're going to, if you don't mind, we're going to do all the...
Are there expanded items for the...
There are, yes.
There are?
Yes.
I know there's 2 pink slips. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Don't get nervous. Pink slips only means expanded level sheets I didn't sign.
That's not what it says in the book.
Although maybe a couple of you need to see me afterwards. Yeah, if you don't mind, we'll get through all the general fun stuff and then.
All right, I'm going to go to Trustee Brady, Senior Services.
Thank you. First of all, you know, I've been involved with the village a long time, and I've seen many department heads and employees come, and they've all been good. But I've had the pleasure, the last 4 years, of working with Sherry Huzar. You know, first of all, she's been good to me because, you know, we try to at least meet once a month or so to discuss what's going on. And her favorite spot is the salad place. It's great for my diet. But anyways, I can't tell you how efficient these two departments work. I was skeptical when she was asked to add social services along with the senior responsibilities. I figured, boy, that's a lot of responsibility for one person. But I gotta tell you, you know, there's people that can multitask, and there's people that can juggle 3 balls and 4 balls. Well, she can juggle 1,000 of them, and she does it so well. There's one aspect of what's under her control that she does do well. I've seen her with the counselors. You know, some of these things aren't even core service related, but she's there, and she gets the job done, and she does it efficiently. She does it with probably, like, for 17, her senior budget is down a little bit from 16's request, and her social services is just up a few dollars. No expanded, you know, costs and everything else. And I got to tell you, I can't tell you that for the small amount that her department gets in the way of money, we're getting a large amount of return on the services she provides. And she's got a lot of great ideas. She does so many things well. I've seen her out in the street when a house burnt and the person couldn't, she was there all day helping this person personally, you know, getting her affairs, who to call, where she should go, you know, and with people that have crimes committed against them, she's there helping them, sending her counselors with them, you know, helping these people. It's nothing but a true service that she provides, and it's something that the money is well spent as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, Ken. Sherry?
Thank you, Trustee Brady. And while I appreciate all the accolades, I do not do all this work by myself. We have a wonderful staff, and we are here to serve the residents. That is what we do. So we are just honored to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. There's been a lot going on with the senior services, and the population, as we all know, is growing every day as we speak. And I think the future of how we handle senior services, along with some consolidation, working together with other government taxing bodies, is going to be really the future that I see in the upcoming year coming to fruition. So, it hasn't been easy, because there are different types of seniors out there. The younger, the middle, and the older. And we got to make sure that we have everybody okay and on board and working together with everybody's needs. So I know there has been numerous talks with the Park District, along with staff, along with myself, along with Trustee Brady, that those talks are continuing, and I think we're really close to coming to a final vision for our senior services in this community. So I'm sure after the first of the year, we'll have more to tell, and when we get some things in writing and the attorneys look at things and everything else too. So, but again, Sherry, great job. I mean, it's not easy today. Thank God for some of these other social service agencies out there that I get reports from and how they contribute to our community with the help that they need from the fire department or police department and your department as well. But there's needs out there. And again, here we go again with the state of Illinois. And a lot of those agencies, if they are cut, if they are not properly funded, I think the burden and the onus is going to be on us. It has to be. And we need to be conscious of that as well. So keep up the good work and your team. All right, next. Mary Trustee Kruger, Fire Department.
Thank you. Yes, I'm the liaison to the fire department, and Chief McIsaac and Director Monteshane and I met and discussed certainly the fire department budget, which is, like Trustee Vogel said, is pretty flat. There are no expanded sheets for fire this year. I would say that we spent a lot of our time talking about what I'll highlight that President Argyris commented earlier on, and that new development, current new development in this town is going to bring an impact to our core services, namely fire and police, with regards to the new developments coming online very soon. So we spend a lot more time, I think, talking about the future and the future needs of the community, and certainly when we need to pull the trigger to start talking about more bodies to support the increase in residents to the town. We did talk a little bit about some building improvements, Station 23, and there certainly has been over the years talk of a new fire station on the other side of the tracks. Those are huge, huge price tag items, and I think that Chief McIsaac certainly and his staff are outstanding in the capacity of knowing the right time to pull the trigger on those items. I'd like to see us, I anticipate we will be talking about those things in the very near future, especially with Northgate Crossings and Town Center and Phil Haven and some other developments that are going to impact our public safety. Other than that, like I said, it's a pretty flat budget. I think if there's any increase, it has to do with the 911 fees that we are losing. We've already talked about that, and we're aware of it. And other than that, the fire department, I love supporting the fire department for these reasons, as well as their philanthropic efforts to fundraise for our community and really be present and available. Other than that, I have nothing else to add.
Thank you, Trustee Kruger. Chief?
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we are very blessed as a community to have the people who work within the fire department. I obviously personally couldn't do any of this without them, and they have really stepped to the plate over these last several years to try to do more with less, and they do it every day. And it's through their efforts that we continue to provide, which I believe, service that is second to none in the northwest suburbs. I'm also pleased, I think, to point out that because of a lot of efforts, and it goes beyond the fire department, but both community development, fire prevention, and public education efforts, that we are celebrating our 20th year without a residential fire fatality in this community. And that is very unusual, particularly if you've seen the paper recently about what happened in one of our neighboring communities. Again, I think that's a testament to the people that work here in the village.
Thanks, Chief. And, you know, Trustee Kruger had touched base on how great the fire department's been with their fundraising and helping the community and doing stuff, along with the police department. And I just think that is what our community is all about. And this is actually my 16th budget book, which I'm going to ask you after the meeting to autograph it, because there's no pink slip in there asking for 9 guys. And that's the first time since I've been sitting up here. But as I said earlier, it's something that we really need to look at in the future. I get it. But thank you for that anyway. But you know what? Got some new stuff, new equipment. A lot of people outside of the community are saying it. Wow, sharp trucks. Really neat stuff, you know. But it's giving them the proper training and the equipment that makes a good fire department, in my opinion. And that's why I think this board made the investment to do that, and the right thing to do. And we continue to do that as well with the 2 new ambulances going to be getting on board pretty soon. So, thanks, Chief.
I'd like to add, if I may, to what Trustee Kruger was saying about our facilities. Station 23 is a chief 30-year-old building, 40-year-old building, and that is something that we are going to address through CIP because there are major renovations necessary to that building. And as far as the 3rd fire station, that's something we're going to have to look at in earnest, both to justify the expense versus staying here, but also to take action on it, because we know that, what is that?
What is that? They're backing up.
Well, that's unique. To prepare for the future, not only our current needs, but also recognizing that there's geographical concerns in this community because of the way we are set up and divided with the tracks that we need to address. So that's something that we're going to be looking at in the future. But probably from a priority standpoint, the chief and I talked, and we know that renovations to Station 23 are our top priority as far as our facilities go.
Agree. Thanks.
Question, please.
Sure.
Sorry, Chief McIsaac, from the weekly reports that I've read, is it a safe assumption to say that approximately it's a 60-40 split between EMS calls and fire suppression calls?
Approximately, probably a little closer to 70-30.
Okay. And that does make a difference on your staffing, and with projects like the Whitley coming on board and different complexes, I expect that to increase? More
Yes, and
EMS?
actually, we're seeing an increase already as a result of calls at the Northgate Crossings complex as that nears completion. Again, residential generates ambulance calls. Industrial, commercial generates a smaller percentage of increase, but fire calls. So yes, I do anticipate we'll see an uptick over the next 18 months in ambulance calls.
Thank you.
I should also point out, though, the positive thing, though, is that the fact that all of our people are cross-trained as paramedics, and the fact that all of our fire trucks are also equipped completely with paramedic equipment. The only thing they can't do is basically transport a patient. The good part is that we can dispatch a fire truck to an ambulance call, even if ambulances are busy, and initiate paramedic services while we wait for that transport capability. So we're not leaving anybody at this point hanging, if you will, for services. We're giving them and continuing to give them prompt service.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? No? Trustee Papantos, back to finance. I know you met with Michael and his team.
Right.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. Since he's a White Sox fan, is for 2 weeks now we've been hearing about. But any comments?
I want to thank the Finance Department and their time. I have to mention that I think it was early September, I was out for a walk, and Sunday afternoon, and there's Brian walking in to go to work on a beautiful day instead of probably doing something he'd much rather be doing. And the funny thing is, people say, you're reading that budget, is it, you must be falling asleep. And I'm like, I kind of like it. So there's a problem with me too, if that's the case. Obviously, the finance budget is pretty flat. Michael, you've done a great job, and your staff, of trying to save us money by refinancing, paying off debt, saving us those interest payments, and obviously we want to all keep up the good work. My concerns are, we mentioned it before, the LGDF. If this gets cut and we can only stay on top of it, what do we do as a municipality, as well as property tax freezes that have been proposed, and where we're going to go from there? It's a scary situation, but we have to be able to react, but at the same point, we can't budget for something that we really just don't know.
Thank you. Michael?
Is this on? Yeah, I guess it is. Well, thank you for those compliments. I don't really have much to add. Our budget is 90% personnel. There's nothing really new in it of any significance. I'd like to thank, again, Brian and Angela for putting a lot of the budget together. They do most of the work, so I appreciate their efforts, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions from the board? No? Thanks, Michael. Let's go with Trustee Lang, Police Department.
Thank you. Well, my commercial for the police department is, out in the community, I've heard a lot of very positive things about the police department, a positive presence in the community. And it makes a big difference. Police in this day and age have come under a lot of fire for lots of things in other areas, but, you know, in Wheeling, you can trust that, you know, here's our guys out with, out in the community at events, National Night Out, Rocking with the Cops, Shopping with the Cops, you name it. So there's a great police presence, and it's a positive police presence here, and that means a lot. You know, on another thing where, and I've tried to bring some of the trustees in on some of the training that I've done with the police department as well to get a better understanding. And, you know, how problems are eliminated when a department is as well-trained as ours is. And it really is a pleasure to see that, because I see it on the other end when we're in executive session and we're talking about things that cost us money. And the folks in the police department are really avoiding that costing us money by being so well-trained. And it's nice to see. A little bit of a twist where it seems like we're, as a board, we're all asking about the new developments that are coming on board here with Riva, with Phil Haven, with Town Center, and how staff needs to be eventually added on to. So I posed that question to Chief Dunn, and what's nice is that, you know, maybe because he's so new here, fresh approach, he said, I don't need new bodies. I've taken the resources I have and reallocated the folks to the needs, to the areas I need them, reallocated resources, recalculated statistics. So statistics are more concentrated. They're in areas where he can control them better, and make the best use of the current staff, again, by reallocating the resources and putting them where he needs it, putting them, the folks at the time he needs them, and so on. So it was refreshing to hear that he isn't looking for new staff, and he thinks he can do the best with the folks that he has. And that was good, really good to hear. You know, again, it's that fresh approach. He's our newest staff member, and so I appreciate all that you've done in this almost a year that you've been here as well. You've taken a great department and stepped it up and made it even better. I do have some info on expanded requests and some thoughts about that, but I'll wait till that time.
Sure.
But thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lang. Chief?
Thank you, President Argyris. I'd like to thank the board for the fiscal support that the police department receives. The training, the equipment is outstanding. We're wanting nothing that anybody else has. You provide us with all the tools and the resources we need to perform our tasks. In addition to that, as Trustee Lang said, we don't experience the issues of Chicago or nationally, how the police are perceived and received. We feel and visibly see the support we get from you and the community, and for that, on behalf of the police department, I thank you. I'd like to thank Deputy Chief Wolf and his staff and the rest of the command staff for preparing the budget. Our budget isn't just driven by us, it's driven by my peers in the village. They provide us with the information and the tools and equipment that we need. You know, Public Works, Fire, they support our mission, and they provide us with the what we need to perform our day-to-day goals. Technology is a force multiplier. You've seen it over the years. There's some requests you'll see coming your way. There's things you've provided in the past that continue to be a force multiplier, and that's one of the reasons we can do what we do with the resources we have. So again, for the men and women of the Wheeling Police Department, thank you for your support.
Thank you, Chief. Questions? Okay. Trustee Vito, Community Development.
Yeah, community development is pretty much the same as last year for the most part. I met with, phone called in with Michael and Andrew. It was a little time crunch this week, but we went over everything. Nothing really too surprising. There's some expanded level requests that we can talk about later, but it looks like, you know, Andrew pretty much did what he had to do, kept everything within the reins, and there's really nothing year over year to kind of raise our eyes at, or, you know, he's just doing a good job, so that's about it.
Okay. Andrew?
Thank you. Yeah, I think as Trustee Vito said, we are continuing, I think what we've been working on in community development is continuing the trend of efficiencies. Mark left the department in very good shape, and I think what I've been working on is continuing the trend that he had started of looking to make incremental improvements in our procedures and functions. We've been working on our in CD we do so many different things. I think that it's tough to put us in one little basket there. But we do such a wide variety of things with a staff of 12, and for that reason we interact with a lot of the other departments, and we really do appreciate the support of every department here. And I think what we've been focused on in the last couple of years again is really the efficiency, working on improving our customer interactions, and what you see from last year and this year's budget is to support that, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Thank you. Questions?
I have one.
Trustee Kruger?
Director Jennings, I didn't get the chance admittedly to comb over your budget like I did fire, but is there any increase at all in adjudication because of so many more hearings that we're having right now? Is there any increase in financials due to that?
We project some generally across the village. It's not necessarily reflected in community development, I don't believe. I don't know that it's spelled out specifically for our department.
Who picks up that tab?
The village does.
John?
Is the question who picks up the tab?
Yeah.
And the costs associated with it are in the legal department budget for paying for our attorney fees that represent the village, and for the adjudicator. I do think that any increase in adjudication speaks to our staff's ability to get out, and I know it always sounds bad to say write tickets because it's going out and punishing the public, but really it's not. It's upholding the codes and standards of this board and of this community, so I think those are a good thing. And I do think there's been some increase, certainly with our home-based business initiatives lately, that has become a major factor of what CD does.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do we still have weekend inspectors?
We don't currently have weekend inspectors. We do work occasionally with the police department. If we need something specific, we'll ask them for support. We'll ask maybe the fire department, but usually the police department to fill in and let us know as needed. But nobody from CD is currently assigned for weekend duty.
Yeah, because I can't say it's all illegal, but a lot of times you'll see roofers working Saturday and Sunday and the like, and you wonder why in a weekend are they trying to get away with something?
I have challenged Andrew to talk to his staff and arrange time so that there is at least someone here once a week in the evening and once during the weekend. So especially as construction starts again towards the spring, we hope to have that with existing staff, of course. It's difficult to require a different schedule of our employees, but we're hoping that we can come to some conclusion that gives us some hours in the evening, at least once a week on a rotating schedule, and over the weekend.
I think it's important. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Economic development. I want to combine economic development probably with administration.
Sure, yeah,
Okay,
they're
so
all
we
part of
can
the same budget.
They're all purposes. But as you all know, I work very closely, not with just John Svandelis, but also with John Malanafi. And Michael, one of the interesting things that you showed on one of your slides was how important it is to have homes and businesses paying taxes, that they're still here. And one of the mindset and philosophies that we've had is not just bringing in new business, which is very, very important, and we're working very hard to do, but also retaining existing businesses. It's very important to do. That's why I've always said that the mindset of being business friendly it's a goal of ours, and we need to continue to do that. Inspections needs to be done regarding our homes. There are things out there that sometimes go by the wayside, and we need to take ownership of that, because those homeowners are very important to us as well. It's retaining them, making sure property values are maintained and everything else. There's code violations all over the place. I mean, there needs to be a really proactive approach to getting those things done. And I'm glad to hear that John is working with Andrew on having somebody here at night, have somebody here on a weekend, because that seems to be the biggest problem. Whether it be political signs all over the place, or just signs, or this, or whatever, where our police department is actually picking up signs and doing things, or nobody does anything, which is a problem for a lot of us. I'm happy to say that businesses today, in the year to date, there's over 30 new businesses here in Wheeling. Those are businesses that weren't here. These are businesses that are creating a new revenue source for us. I could tell you Director Malanaphy, along with Drew Garcia, I'm telling you something, if you wanted Hall of Famers, we got them with these two. When I go outside of the village, and I'm involved with many of the other conferences and committees and stuff that I've been, and they, where did you get this John Malanaphy? I hear it all over the place. It's like they're jealous. And I don't tell them anything, because I'm not telling you. So John has made a name for himself through his family, through his father. There's a history of the Malanaphies, and that economically has been terrific for us. I get many calls, as you all know, for businesses that are inquiring, and they talk to me, and you know, we have pleasantries over the phone, but when it gets down to the hard numbers and the business itself, John takes over, follows up right away. And I think if you see the Rich Low Food organizations that we've had in this town, the Dynamax companies that are left Lake County to come to our town and take over factories that were empty, that are back on the tax rolls again, this is huge for us. This makes it an even playing field for the property taxpayers today, because we are bringing new businesses here. We are retaining the businesses that are here. That's why it's very important, whether it be zoning, whether it be codes, whether it be what, is to work with businesses, new businesses that are here today, or encourage those that want to expand, because that's a revenue source as well. But I'll tell you something, it's been a pleasure working with John and Drew, and the respect that they have, what we've done with the Chamber of Commerce in the last couple of years, what we've done with our international presence with South Korea, has all come through admin and community development, economic development, and it continues to grow. So actually we're getting folks beyond the Koreans that are reaching out to myself and inviting me over to the consulate offices, the consulate of Japan. Consul General of Japan has been a friend of Wheeling now, because there are a couple businesses here that are Japanese-based that we need to have here. We've created a numerous amount of jobs here in the last couple, 2-3 years. It's been a really upswing on that. The Boston Fishes of the world, the Binnies of the world, and working with old property owners west of the tracks, I won't mention any names, but that continues to be a priority to do something, and continues to be meetings here on a regular basis with those property owners to do something. And been very nice, very patient, but patience is run thin with some of them. So John has been very instrumental in getting some of these things done. And again, it's a department that works with community development and other departments to make things happen. Because sometimes you need your EDC guy to maybe knock on the door of a business of something that the engineering department needs. Because there is that one-on-one, first-name base relationship that we've created here in the last couple of years, and I think that's very important. So, again, we continue to do a lot of things. I know John has a list of stuff he wants to add, but regarding admin, whether it be human resources, whether it be the
special events, legal
legal
agencies,
the secretaries of Karen and Lisa and Martin. You talk about getting things done. If there's an assignment that needs to be done or something that needs to be followed up with or researched, second floor's got the team. Our newsletters are just reaching out and doing things and getting things done, whether it be the Festival of Lights. I mean, a lot of that's done on the second floor, coordinating it all, making sure it's all happening with the help of PW and the other agencies. But it's fun up here because you see the energy, you see the enthusiasm of getting stuff done. And whether it be a task or an assignment that any one individual does, when it gets done, they're really happy about it. And I've been around here a long time, didn't see that much. To them, it was a job. What time is it? I'm out the door. It's not the case anymore. Drew Garcia's here sometimes 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. John's here that late. I've seen John here on the weekends. It's getting the job done for this community. And it continues. And our village manager, my God, I'm driving by here at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. I can see his face in the window over here, and he's working. So this is good stuff. You lead by example, and you work as a team. And this board is a huge part of it because we've given them, I believe, the incentive to get things done. We've gotten them excited to get things done, and I think our community's really changed because of that. And we talk about kumbaya and camaraderie. It's fun again. It really is. And it should be. And my biggest thing that I enjoy more than anything else is when I go outside and I have other mayors or other people in other communities looking up to us now, where that wasn't the case many years ago. And I think we need to continue. Our work is never done. And our work should never be taken advantage of. Or we need to focus on, like I said, retention and taking care of our business owners. There's good and bad all over. I get it. We all get it. But again, it's to our benefit that we continue this mentality and move forward with it. But again, John, I thank you because you've made us look good. Our staff makes us look good. But with new people coming into town that don't know us, I wouldn't ask for a better team than you and Drew to meet with these folks and really, you sell this town. And that's what we need. And I do what I can to help you. And we're having fun doing that as well. But I'll leave it up to you now. I know you got a bunch of stuff you want to share with the board, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, President Argyris. Obviously, this is a team effort. I've worked with you extensively, all the other trustees, Ray Lang, in attracting new businesses. We've tried to raise the profile of Wheeling as a business-friendly community, and our board has been so supportive of that. I've got a great staff with Drew Garcia, not only in our business attraction efforts and business retention. We work with our TIF districts, our grant administration, but we're really trying to create jobs, enhance our sales and property tax revenues because that has such an impact on all the other employees in the village and our residents and businesses. We have had some really great success stories with, you mentioned Richlow Foods. I mean, we couldn't have done that without help from community development, the fire chief, police chief, all of our staff on the second floor and first floor to get all these things approved with Northgate Crossings, with the town center. You know, just some of the small businesses that we put in from, you know, Spears, Trustee Brady, like Salata, we put that one in, Starbucks, Boston Fish Market. We've got 800 Northgate Parkway. We're looking at a 181,000 square foot spec industrial building. Dynamax, Precision Zone, Master Brew. We got Binny's coming in, Stella's, Nema Seafood. All of these things build upon one another, and we're getting our name out there and raising the profile of what Wheeling's trying to do as a great location for business as well as the residents. And we can't do it alone. If we don't have a supportive board, a supportive village manager, trustees give me ideas on new types of retailers or restaurants that we should be trying to attract. They give me leads. I can think of an example of Trustee Papantos mentioning a new retailer that we should be talking to, and we have been talking to them. So it's a team effort, and I think we've you know, had a lot of great successes, and we're looking for more in the near future with the town center starting to break ground shortly. I think that'll be a real catalyst for additional development and redevelopment in our community. So thank you very much, and looking forward to another great year in 2017.
Thanks. Questions from the board? Ray?
Thanks. Well, with John, the closer, Malanaphy. We looked to, I had asked that John and John Spondoulis come to the aviation conference a couple weeks ago in hopes to get John more familiar with the aviation industry. He already started making contacts and relationships with some of the aviation folks to build out, importantly, build out industrial lane in some of that area around the airport. Right now, it's live TIF and it's sitting status quo, and we need to do something to build that property up, whether it's it still remains in the Village of Wheeling or the airport eventually buys it. Who knows? I mean, there's some opportunities out there that we could accommodate, and John's really helping facilitate some of that now on behalf of the Village of Wheeling for Wheeling property. And it's I think we're very fortunate to now tap into that again for the airport. You know, and building the revenue at the airport only means down the line that the airport then has more funding for noise remediation and so on when we get to that point. We have our matching federal funding to be able to solve some of those problems. So without growth over there, right now there isn't the funding available. That's why it fell off the table years ago for any kind of noise remediation. But it's back, and we're talking about it again. And this is a way, certainly with economic development over there, to make a difference and start building some revenue and letting the airport as well afford some of the matching funding and solve some issues. So appreciate that.
Thanks. Trustee Papantos?
Two quick questions, and one business I think you probably, we have to point out is Cafe Zupas. I've noticed that it's moving quickly along, and I'm very happy. It shows we lost one business with Fifth Third Bank closing and immediately had somebody else coming in, and that's just great that another restaurant and it's Lake County and they won't be affected by the new soft drink tax. So hopefully they'll do well, but I like seeing something going in right away, and thank you for that.
We worked very diligently with Cafe Zupas. They were on my list here. It's just there was quite a few. But you know, we couldn't have done it without community development and the plan commission and working with all the different departments to get them open and operating. And you know, we've got a couple others in the pipeline we can't talk about yet, but we have a lot of prospects in trying to get, when a business goes vacant, to get somebody in there right away, because we want to eliminate any commercial blight as quickly as possible.
And I appreciate that. I do have one question. We, I think 3 years ago, joined the North Shore Visitor Convention Bureau. How do we measure the success of being a member there? It's rather intangible.
That's a great question, and we you know, articulated that when we were approached by the Westin Hotel about becoming a member. We weren't represented by any convention bureau, and so it's really a challenge to quantify and measure all the economic benefits that they offer. I feel that there's intrinsic benefits of being with the affiliation of the North Shore and all the other facilities and amenities and restaurants that they market on their website and all their correspondence. I believe our occupancies have improved and our hotel tax revenues have been positively impacted by the Convention Bureau. They market Wheeling, all the hotels, all our restaurants, and through their website, and they also attend trade shows with meeting planners and market our facilities to those meeting planners to have their meetings here in Wheeling. And we've, you know, had some of the PGA here, different conventions that have been held at the Westin Hotel, which there's spin-off benefits to our restaurants, to our retail facilities, to our gasoline stations, and so forth. It's just difficult to measure the total economic impact, but we believe that it was a solid investment for the Village of Wheeling, and we're very pleased with the work that the Convention Bureau's been providing to Wheeling.
And do we track it so that if we do, for lack of a better term, flatline on it, of no more growth, that we can
Sure.
reevaluate?
Absolutely. We have a 3-year contract with them, and we can reevaluate, and we just have to give them notice that we do not want to extend the contract.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to add one comment to that, if I may. This is more towards CVBs in general, as opposed to that specific one. In order to capture revenue from the state related to Convention and Visitors Bureau, you have to belong. There's no requirement that a community belongs to a CVB, but in order to capture that money, you have to belong to one. The reason this opportunity came up is because several years ago, there was another CVB that we were a part of that kind of fell apart. There was some situation there, but I just wanted to add, we don't talk about it a lot, but there is some revenue that we are able to capture because of our participation in a CVB. But obviously your question and the points are very relevant as to which one you belong to, but we don't really talk about the importance of belonging to one in general, and I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Economic Development? Administration, you want to touch base on anything?
Really, the admin budget is comprised of ED, admin, Board of Trustees, legal, special events, special agencies. President Argyris, you touched on a number of the things that really come through those particular budgets, human resources as well. There's not a lot of change because those are kind of your standard fare for what we do. Those budgets are all pretty much flatline. There's really nothing new introduced in any of those budgets. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
IT is in your budget, right?
Yes.
I'm just going to bring it up because I got a text from someone who's watching us today who said that the feed is difficult to see, certainly for slides. We've talked about this before. I'm wondering if there's something that our IT folks can do to improve that.
That is an excellent question and a frustrating answer because our equipment in this building is top-notch. It certainly was top-notch as of 8 years ago when we built it, and a significant expense, as you see in our SURF contributions. Most of the problems that the residents experience are from the cable provider. Unfortunately, our providers have not made it a priority to increase the feed. I honestly don't remember how it's measured, but the point is they throttle down when it comes to local access channels. And that is something that Director Ursan has been working with. We're really not getting anywhere with them because it's an investment they need to make that they don't really see a return on. These cameras actually have the capability of filming in HD. So we could broadcast, from the village's perspective, we could broadcast these meetings in HD, which is why I believe if you watch them online from our YouTube channel, you will see a drastic improvement in the quality that those videos show versus what's through the cable systems. So unfortunately, it's not something we control, but it is something that we continue to work on to try to convince the cable providers that they need to pay a little more attention because our residents are paying attention.
Sure. And I think it's good that we now have, or at least I do, a way to direct citizens who make that complaint that, hey, watch it on your computer because you're going to see it much clearer there.
Maybe Jeff needs glasses.
He has them.
Trustee Brady?
You know, as you read through the budget the week before, things catch your eye. We're getting all new iPads next year?
Yes.
Oh, good. Is that a suggested time to replace them?
That was my frustration, but recognizing that I think the frustration that you all see maybe with, there are larger screens, there are advanced technologies available in the newer models. It has been, I think, 7 years or so, maybe 6 years. So we talked about it internally about when does it make sense to upgrade those. We also had a conversation about whether iPads were the right tool anymore versus a Windows product. And that was a rather lengthy conversation. But not only are we looking at the equipment side, we're looking at the back end side, and something that didn't make the budget, but you'll probably hear me talk about at the beginning of the new year, is something called Board Docs, which is a company, and it's a software program that a number of municipalities use as their platform for organizing agendas, record retention, et cetera, and that links directly to how you see the agenda. Right now, we use GoodReader as an app. There's a lot of staff time between IT and my staff in creating an agenda and making it work electronically. Board Docs or something similar really automates all of that. And then, in addition to the automated creation, there's the record retention and availability of documents and ease of accessing those documents that comes with it. So that's something you'll hear about at the beginning of next year, but all kind of coincides with what is the tool that we use to navigate through these meetings.
I can understand the amount of time that you have to put in at your job and everybody's job. A simple little thing like an iPad would take so much in discussion and research on.
And this is actually, it's the perfect introduction, if you're ready to do so. It's the perfect introduction to the expanded level sheets, because there are a number, you heard the police chief talk about force multipliers, there are a number of expanded level requests that are specifically the point that you that address specifically the point that you just brought up, that nowadays it's impossible to do any job without utilizing some form of technology. And in order then to create the efficiencies, it's the word of the day every year in the budget process, sometimes you have to invest in additional technology in order to avoid even additional personnel, because you're able to create more time for people to do their jobs by giving them a different tool. And there are a couple of those examples in the expanded level sheets. So what we would like to do today is, if you turn to page 205, it's also tabbed in your draft document. Expanded level sheets are exactly what the name implies. There's the operating budget that you see reoccurring year to year. Expanded level requests come to me from department heads that discuss either an expanded service or an expanded piece of equipment that is not part of our current technology or our current budget. And the first layer of approval comes to me. There's an explanation from the department head about why they are requesting what they are requesting. If I sign it, it becomes white in the pages you see before you. If I did not sign it, it becomes, or it remains unsigned and pink. So that's what we talk about when we talk about pink sheets. Anything that is already signed and is white is included in the budget before you. So when we talk about $111,000 surplus, everything that is white is already included in the expenses and therefore calculated into the surplus. Anything that is pink that you decide to add in would of course be subtracted from that surplus, and absolutely you have the authority to tell me I'm wrong and turn anything that is white pink. So what we're going to do is I will walk through, pardon?
Let's do page by page.
Yeah, we're going to go page by page. I will introduce the highlight of what the request is and why I signed or did not sign. Obviously, the department heads are available to answer any detailed questions. And again, I just remind you that the $111,000 surplus, this is where that number becomes real. Stays the same, increases or decreases. So beginning on page 205, I'm going to go department by department. President Argyris will ask for your consensus after we get through each one of these. So we'll go item by item. Beginning with community development, the request was for a new position, part-time permit clerk. This was easy for me. You'll see that the net effect, the cost is just under $7,000. Rarely do you see a request for an employee and the cost is only $7,000. We currently have a position that the duties reoccur, the duties reoccur. We treat it seasonally. There's $10,000 in the budget because it was a seasonal employee. There are a long list of benefits to having this person here at a reduced hours per week rate, but throughout the year. I see this as a benefit not only to the department as it relates to customer service, but also provides a more consistent opportunity for the department to deal with some of the things like the backlog of filing, the backlog of what's the correct term, of turning all of our files into electronic files, scanning, basically. There's a long list of things that this position will do, and for $7,000, really $6,800, I thought it was appropriate.
Okay, next one.
Do you want to say yes or no to each one?
Why don't we finish what you...
All of them? Okay. This goes right back to where we left off with Trustee Brady's comment, tablet-based inspection program. This one's a little tricky because you see a $14,000 request. However, this is for the purchase of both the equipment to perform the tasks and software. This really is moving away from paper forms. This allows our inspectors to go out in the field and create digital records, reports of what they see. The expense that is listed as $12,000 is a bit unknown. This is the high end. What needs to happen in order for the equipment to make sense is that it integrates into our animation software, which is what we use for all of our, well, for everything. It's the backbone of our financial system. So the $12,000 is a high end and the top of what we expect the integration cost to be. Until you approve it, we really can't get too deep into making sure that and how that software will work with Penimation. We know that it will. We hope that that cost is lower, but at the most it would be $14,000.
Okay, next.
Permit desk modifications. One of my priorities, certainly one of the board's priorities, is customer service. This serves a number of needs. Yes, this is physically a wall. We are anticipating this to be an attractive thing. This is not a dry wall. This is not a not a kiosk,
Cubicle?
the partition, thank you, I was going to say divider. This is not a partition, this is an attractive glass wall with an etched logo on it. The point is multifold. One, it is to draw a distinction for both staff and the user that the person up front is there to perform customer service duties. Right now, it is an open design, which is very nice. And we would retain all the benefits of that, meaning this wall is not going to go floor to ceiling, so we keep all the natural daylight, all of that good and important stuff. But it really allows staff to understand that when they are sitting at that desk, that their main focus is customer service. But it also provides an opportunity for staff to do their job without having to, and I know this happens, this sounds a little strange, but sometimes you walk around to avoid being seen because you need to do that for appointment purposes. And this wall, I think, is really came from a conversation, many conversations about customer service and what we can do to improve the front desk experience. You will notice that Andrew has already made some physical changes down there with the way that the desks are aligned and where the register is at the front desk. He also has some ideas about potentially using self-service kiosks, not where we would abandon the interaction with staff, but to help improve the process. This is just another in those suggestions of improving efficiency internally and the experience with the public from an external perspective.
I'd like to see something on this.
Oh, we'll draw it up. Yeah, this is...
I'm sure everybody else will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to do department by department, or...
Keep going.
Keep going, okay.
Do all the whites at once. Okay.
And skip the pinks?
Do the whites first.
Okay, then moving on to the police department. This is the semi-automatic automated external defibrillator. These are replacement AED devices. This is one of those that I would call, it's just the cost of doing business. There's not much that we could do. They didn't qualify individually for SURF. They also have different life expectations. This is just a replacement of those AED devices. Obviously, this serves the public.
Yes, quick question. Is there any way that this could be paid for from the foreign tax fund?
That's fire.
This is police.
This is police.
Yeah, but isn't this benefiting the fire department in effect? Is it not? Because it's...
I don't know that that argument would fly technically. I see your point, and I think that a connection can be
If they're
drawn.
the first responder,
But I honestly, I don't know. Can the police department expend funds from, obviously, the foreign firefighter fund has to approve it, which I'm not sure that they would.
Yeah, the foreign fire insurance money is supposed to be used for the benefit of the fire department, so I guess there's an argument that could be made there, but the board, the Foreign Fire Insurance Board would have to approve it.
So let's move on. They won't, so.
Similar to the reasoning behind the last item, immunization shots had to be, obviously, this is I believe, a necessity for our police staff. This is already, Chief McIsaac, correct me if I'm wrong, already included in what is provided to our fire department. So this is expanding those immunizations to our police department. Bicycle patrol. This is a $17,000 cost. It is returning to a program that we had many years ago. DC Wolf, do you remember how long, or Chief Dunn, I don't know if you remember, how long it's been since we've had the bike patrol? Okay, thank you. So for 10 years, we've gone without, but Chief Dunn, and I concur, believes that there is a need and that the bike patrol does provide a service, obviously weather permitting, but what it does is it gets our officers deeper into the neighborhoods. Yes, there's the park perspective of they get to ride through the parks, yes, but really for me what's more important is that they get to get deeper into the neighborhoods where a squad car really can't get, number one, and number two, a squad car is much more obvious. If you really want to see what's going on, you need to be a little less obvious. I think for $17,000, this program provides an essential benefit to our residents.
We have the equipment already.
Yes.
Chief Dunn, you want to add anything, or Deputy Chief Wolf?
It's a program that I've experienced in my other communities, and I just think it's beneficial. Anything we can do to get the officers closer to the residents or remove the barrier of the car, it generates conversations, and we can interject staff into closer proximity to activities that are occurring in the village.
Trustee Papantos?
I just have one question. How are we going to measure the success of this program, and will it be something we'll look at the end of each year to say this was worthwhile or not?
It's one of those activities that's not measurable. There's no, it's not data-driven, and there's no statistics to review. Really, it is going to be anecdotal on the officers when they report back to us as to where they were, what activities they were engaged in. And I suppose the one statistic we could look at is when there's enough manpower on to a shift. If, say, example, there's 9 officers assigned to a shift because nobody's taking vacation that day, they could deploy the bikes in lieu of a squad car. And in those cases, and in the other cases when they're just doing the community relations portion, we could measure how many arrests they made from that. But I'm not really looking at this as a statistic-driven thing. This is a community involvement and engagement type of activity.
And it's not that I'm against it, it's just that I want to know that there's at least some benefit. So at the end of the year, if we have some report, even if it's anecdotal, that this is working or what we can do to improve it if need be.
I'll be happy to. We will be keeping records of hours worked and events attended and things like that. I will be able to provide you with a bike report at the end of the year.
Great, thank you.
Sure. What is the cost based on? The $17,000?
Cost is based on overtime.
Why would it need to be overtime if they're on shift?
Well, because I'm saying that would be the benefit if I had officers known and we could assign them to work it. But the $17,000 is based on a fixed number of hours of 2 nights a week, certain amount of hours, and 4 shifts on weekends of deploying it as overtime, as opposed to just taking off a shift. Because I don't know that I'll have that officers here based on overtime, or excuse me, based on sick leave and other issues. So the $17,000 is all overtime.
Okay.
May I add to that? Please correct me if I'm wrong. Part of the concern is you don't want to pull an officer if you don't have enough bodies in squad cars, because it becomes a safety issue. Because obviously you can't respond as quickly if you're on a bike. So Chief Dunn, am I correct? That's why it's overtime, because you don't want to deplete your response time.
Right, we would never reduce our minimum level of staffing that we have in marked cars that are available to respond anywhere in the community. This would be an enhancement to that.
Question?
Go ahead.
Chief, do you anticipate that there would be times when you are fully staffed during a regular shift and you'd put someone on a bike?
I'm very hopeful of that, yes.
Okay.
And also our special operations unit at night they'll be trained in it and they'll be able to take it out also.
Sounds good. And do you think it's seasonal?
Yes. I don't see them out there in January yet.
Snow plows on them.
Those will be our
Behind the
light
snow
duty
plow.
folks. We'll put them out on the bike in the snow.
Just wanted to illustrate that there's some time in the year where there would be no bikes.
Yes.
One other question, where are the bikes coming from, and is there special equipment, i.e. helmets or lighted helmets?
We have the bikes. In this year's budget, under existing funds, we've already tuned up the bikes, so to speak, dusted them off. They're ready to go. And then the officers will have to be equipped with helmets and uniforms. And we have that built into current budget to be able to do that. So the $17,000 you see is all manpower overtime, which would be in addition to any additional patrols that we would be able to accomplish on a daily basis.
Horses are year-round. Get some mounted police. No, just...
There is one more. Are we done? Am I interrupting?
Go ahead.
That ends the white sheets that are in your book. On the dais, there was a latecomer that we collectively thought was worthwhile and worth inclusion, and that is MSI Parking and Adjudication Software Program. This goes back to technology, and what this does works in conjunction with the company that we already use for a collection on non-moving tickets. So these are any of a number of violations that this software, it works on a couple levels. This software and the equipment that we're requesting, which is one handheld device, works with the computer and printer in the squad cars and allows officers to write compliance tickets, issue them on the spot, and then on the back end, all of that information, because it's now in electronic format, is able to go through our existing debt collector company, which means that the turnaround time, hopefully, and the collection rate goes up for compliance tickets. Right now, we have a significant amount of unpaid tickets. We've talked in the past about the value of how much money is uncollected with parking tickets. This helps on the collection side, but maybe more importantly, provides an opportunity for those that receive the ticket to pay online. Right now, we don't do that. This would allow, you get a ticket today, you just go to the website, you have your ticket number, you pay, and you're done. So we hope that there will be a revenue component to this, because we will see an increased amount of monies collected. That's step one. Step two, if this program is successful, and we believe that it will be, we would like to roll it out to CD, so that as our inspectors go out in the field, they have the same handheld devices that work with the same back-end software and collection process, so that they can issue all of their municipal compliance tickets in the same manner, and people can pay them the same way. Right now, this is just for the police department, and you'll see that the highest cost here is the annual fee. It is a monthly fee. That fee is drastically reduced should we, meaning it is not equally as expensive if we add CD on later. This is the bulk of the cost. We would, of course, if we add CD on, if this program is successful, we would have to buy the handheld devices. But the bulk of the cost would already be included in the annual fee here.
Okay. Questions? No?
Yeah, I do. Do you have any estimate on what you think, or if you think the collection increase rate will eat up that $12,000, the annual fee, or somewhere around there?
That's why we're calling this a pilot. I would, and either Chief Dunn or Michael, if you want to give your opinion, I would say that the answer is yes. I'm hopeful that the answer is yes. But that's why we're rolling it out only to police first before we make the additional investment for CD.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to make any promises about, whether or not that fee would be completely offset, but I do think that it'll increase collections, and we're looking at it more in terms of efficiency. It's going to reduce the amount of staff time that the police department spends on this, as well as the finance department.
Do you have any estimate of how much uncollected fees we have out there, roughly?
We'll get back.
I mean, are we talking like 10,000, 100,000?
It's a lot. It's
more than 12.6?
It's significantly
Yes.
more than 12.6.
All right.
Trustee Pappantos?
I'm sorry, one quick question. You said non-moving. Is that just parking tickets, or?
It would be for parking tickets, compliance violations, anything we wouldn't be sending to the circuit court. So in addition to the revenue collection of it, while we don't, it will also be, the officers may be more motivated to issue those type of citations because of the degree of ease the process will be. And then on the, unfortunately on the receiver end, nobody likes paying a ticket, but it's a little less painful when you just do it from the comfort of your home versus coming into either the village hall or to the police station. And then again, there's at least 3 hands in the police department that touches the ticket once it's issued, and then at least 2 hands at the finance department. So this is just a way of automating the process. And we already have much of the equipment in place already because of our e-ticketing of the moving violations.
Thank you.
Michael, let me ask you something. Regarding the finance department, when they come in for real estate transfer stamp, got to make sure the water bill's paid before they sell a house. Are we tying in parking tickets, code violations, all that based on the address of the property?
We are, but it's not an easy process right now because, and this software will help address this, especially with respect to parking tickets. A lot of that's done by hand, looking through reports about, who's got tickets and at that particular address. And I think this will help us be better able to capture all those dollars.
But it's not tied in, Brian, anyway? I mean,
We
you got
get a
ticket on an
report
address?
on a daily basis from the police department of all outstanding tickets.
Okay.
So that's a readable, searchable document. So if you come in and you want to pay a ticket, we can look up your name and we can see how many we have outstanding. Right now, one of the biggest problems that I have facilitating that is that I can't see what we've already sent to collection. So when we work with the police department on this new software, not only will we be able to see that, but the collection agency will be able to see it at the same time. So if you pay the ticket through the collection agency's website, through our website, at our front counter, anywhere you pay it, everybody in that loop will be able to see it at the same time. And I think the most interesting part of the dollars that we save the most will be in the efficiencies. When the officers are issuing the tickets, that goes directly into the software, and I can see it real time. And there's nobody in the police office in records entering that ticket by hand. So all that goes in right away. So you're eliminating all of that work, and you're eliminating a lot of communication between the finance department and records. When people are sent to collection, they often call in asking, didn't I pay this ticket? Can I see a copy of this ticket? That's all in the system, so the collection agency doesn't need to contact the records department anymore to get copies of those tickets.
Let me give you an example of what happened to me 3 weeks ago. I went to the village, or the city of Skokie, went to the clerk's office to get an exemption stamp on a quick claim deed. The lady behind the counter says, "One moment." She called the finance department. 10 minutes later, she gets a printout, $750 worth of parking tickets for the guy that we're quick claiming onto the house. He got married. He wanted to put his wife on the title. He had paid us $750 to get an exemption stamp that cost $25. That quick. So that's what I'm saying. We're sending this stuff out to collections, in which we'll probably never, ever collect in a lot of ways. But if we can tie it into property where they're, hey, you know what, you got to pay it.
Right now, the finance department doesn't have direct access to that software, and it's a little clunky. With this software, I'd be able to work with my staff, and they'd all have access to this. We'd be able to do that.
Good. I know we're doing it with cutting the grass, right? There's a couple of homes in town, $700 bills regarding cutting the grass because the houses were empty, and we cut the grass.
Mr. President?
We actually bill that monthly now on the utility bills. We add it directly.
So you're keeping an ongoing accounting of it.
That's right.
Good. Yeah.
Wasn't Pentimation supposed to handle all of this?
Well, that's what I thought back then.
That's just the same story we got when we bought Pentimation and been paying for it all these years. That this information is going to be at anybody's fingertips when it comes to sale of a house. People leave town, water, bills for cutting the grass, whatever.
Penimation is a platform that does a lot, that serves a lot of different functions. And I'll let you pick up, but there are also a lot of functions that need to be purchased as add-ons. I don't know that this is kind of an external thing that we're asking to speak with the rest of our financial software. So I don't know specifically that Penimation can handle this. But as far as your larger point goes, there's work order systems that work with Penimation or that are part of Penimation, but that we didn't purchase because it's $100,000. But there may be third-party software that can speak with Penimation, but are only half that. So there are a lot of expanded services that you could purchase through Penimation, in addition to the $1 million initial nut that we spent on the financial portion of Penimation. But we're always looking for ways to incorporate functionality with the backbone of Penimation, but not spend the same amount of money that we would if we did it directly through the Penimation company. Is that a fair
Every year,
assessment?
our budget includes a goodly sum of money for Penimation upgrades or whatever the cost is, you know. And the very items that they're saying were said to us how many years ago when we approved it, you know.
Not for tickets, though. Again, and you could probably expand on.
And I would actually probably defer to Luca to try to answer that question, because I think it's something that we would have to pay more, as you said, we would have to pay more for. We don't have the capability right now.
Can you just, if I may, can you just give a little explanation of what Penimation is and what it does for us?
It consists of a number of different applications. I mean, the finance, it runs all of our finance-related functions. Community development uses it. Human resources uses it. It's the backbone of just about everything we do in terms of payroll and accounting and accounts payable and accounts receivable and permit processing and community development and so on and so forth. So, we've had it for over 20 years, and we've, at some point, there's a possibility we're either going to have to upgrade with Penimation or buy a completely different software package, but the cost of doing that is in the $1 million ballpark. So it's serving it's serving its needs right now, our needs right now, but there are certain things like Trustee Brady has brought up that we just don't have the ability to do at this point with Penimation. And, again, Luca's in the back playing Wizard of Oz, but I think he's in the back, isn't he? And he's been to some conferences recently, and he's done a lot of research on on Penimation and what the future of Penimation is and what the capabilities are, and that's why he could probably better answer Trustee Brady's question than I can. But I think you're right. I think we have some limitations that this software would address.
Are you okay talking to Luca after we're done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mary?
Thank you. I just want to understand clearly about the existing system for writing tickets of this nature is pretty much manual. So the data or the record keeping for those manual things are probably in a series of spreadsheets or reports that you have to look at whenever you're doing what.
When the tickets are issued, they come into the records division, and then one person will take it and file it away for keeping track of when payment is. Another person at some point will have to physically pound in the data to create the database that a ticket was issued.
Okay.
Over a period of time, then we have to, if the ticket's not paid over a period of time, then we forward it over to finance for collections, and they send it off to collection.
And then we lose all ability to see what the status is of that ticket because it's now in the hands of the collection agency.
No, they're just given the name, no, they're provided with the reason of the ticket, the name of the ticket and whatnot, but because people want due process, they don't remember they got a ticket or claim they never got the ticket. So let's say, in order for me to pay the ticket, I want to see the ticket. And so then the collection company contacts finance, who then contact us, who then we research, physically pull up the ticket, Xerox, make photocopy of the ticket, finance over to collections.
Thanks. The reason I ask is because now we're anticipating a more technology-centric way to do this and make it easier and more efficient. Any chance that any of those previously manually done ones can they be entered into this system so that it's all there, or will you be working in tandem, looking for an old thing, the old system, and looking for something after January 1 in the new system?
Some of the old information will be uploaded into the new system.
Okay.
But some of the older data will be like the employees collecting the insurance. We just got to wait a while and it'll end.
But again, why isn't the finance department making that call to records to see if there's any outstanding tickets for the property address that they're looking for a quick claim, a transfer stamp?
We do that now. It's just not a very efficient process.
But are you collecting?
Yeah, we use that report that we get every morning to do that. I think another point of view on this would be to say that we'll be able to continue to collect on tickets after they're sent to collection. Since we can see what the collection agency is seeing, we'll be able to take those payments as well now at the counter and put them on the final bill.
How close are you to getting a true number of what you're sending and what you're collecting from the agency?
I can do that. I get reports from them monthly. So.
Are you collecting monthly?
Oh, yes.
You
Yeah.
are? Okay.
Yeah, we've collected, I can pull a more accurate number, but it's about 60,000 this year. And we did about the same last year as well. Now that's through both local debt recovery and the collection agency, that two-pronged procedure that we're doing.
Excuse me, Brian, how much was it per year?
About 60,000 per year the last 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, whatever you're going to do to make it more efficient and easier for us. Great. Any other questions? Okay, there's 7 white sheets we saw, totaling $106,161. Okay. Anybody want to pull any of them? Good. So starting with Trustee Brady, yes or no?
No.
Yes, you mean to approve them?
Oh, approve them, yes.
Yes, okay. Trustee Kruger?
Yes, approve them.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, let's go with pink sheet.
The first pink sheet is page 208, which is found as a request from the police department. The description is security cameras at strategic locations. I will let the chief explain this because there is a great deal of nuance into this system. However, I would just like to say that I believe this is a good idea. I believe that there is benefit to the cameras. This is a program that the chief has worked with in other towns and has seen tangible benefit from. This is one of the hardest parts of my job because while this expanded level process I think works because it helps to ensure all of you and all of the public that our operating budget isn't suffering from budget creep. This also, it becomes difficult to say no to valuable things because it's a large expense. And with every one of these items that I sign or that you sign, we need to find a way to pay for it. So I do think that this has value. I just couldn't justify asking the $100,000 without hearing from the board that this is a priority from you. So that's where my decision came from. I guess I would ask Chief Dunn to explain exactly what this is.
Chief?
This equipment is, they're security cameras that they, for surveillance purposes, they monitor 24/7, 365. And the purpose of them is to put them up in high-risk, higher crime areas to help suppress nefarious activity and to help us in the investigation of crimes. One of the challenges we have in Wheeling and in some of the surrounding communities is that unfortunately some of our residents and some of the guests to our town who are the victims of crimes are, today's offenders, tomorrow's victim, and vice versa. And if a crime is perpetrated upon them, they become uncooperative witnesses. The issue with that is that's fine that they may not want to pursue the prosecution of someone who committed the crime, but that leaves somebody out in the community or visiting the community who's a offender, potentially violent offender or property crime person who doesn't draw a distinction between who he's targeting sometimes. So what the surveillance cameras allow us to do is to identify offenders and make arrests and successful prosecutions without the cooperation of witnesses. Historically, the surveillance cameras have reduced crime. It is something we will be able to statistically review after a period of time. The locations selected are, there's a couple in the McHenry Road corridor, the Wolf Road corridor. And it's a system that once we have the software in place for and the back end, it can be expanded. So if there's other areas that we want to add, we can add to. It's also an opportunity that we can then, once we have a robust system in place, for a lesser cost to a resident, not so much a resident, but the homeowners association or a business owner, they could expand into our system. Where right now we have many businesses and homeowners associations who have these CCTV systems, but they're not monitored properly, the equipment doesn't work well, and then trying to get it compatible and someone available to give us the access to it is difficult. It's a program we would like to deploy. I believe this was before you last year. Certainly it wasn't a horrible year by not having them. It's it's just an opportunity to, make an investment with the potential of reducing the crimes. And then the final benefit to it is, while we may have a sense of it's a big brother project, my experience has told me that the residents were the areas that that we're monitoring gives people a sense of security, and it makes them feel better. And we want people to feel safe and secure in their homes and in their neighborhoods, and while traversing through and from Wheeling.
So are there any lights on these things?
No, these are not the old-fashioned cop in the box with the red and blue lights on top. That was the first generation. These would be no different than the ones that you don't even you forgot are on the exterior of your building here. We have here at the Village Hall. It's the bubble, the dome, and a small arm.
Okay.
And really, the only way the residents will know about it is we'll post signs saying you're under surveillance, and we will notify the homeowner or the residents of the community in that area, the homeowners, that they're out and you're under surveillance.
Trustee Lang.
Well, this, in talking about this the other day, this is that definition of that force multiplier that we've been talking a lot about today, and bringing more eyes in the community without necessarily more bodies. But one of the things I was thinking of when we were discussing this is how, it's a big chunk of change to pay for this right now. But what if, it does benefit our homeowners associations, it does benefit our businesses. where's the opportunity for us to lean a little bit on those organizations to help us pay for this? They're going to benefit from it clearly. Their cameras will hook up into this, or they will be able to get cameras that hook up into this. What if we lean on them to help pay for this system a little bit, at least a portion of it, or get us started on it? Because right now we're talking about infrastructure. This is the very basic infrastructure of this piece, and we can add on to it. Is that correct, Chief? That it can be added on and?
Yes. Well, once this system is set up, I mean, this is 7 cameras, but we can add multiple to them. In fact, when we first started sitting down and looking at areas, we were at 14 cameras, and let's narrow it down and focus on where we really feel we'll have initial significant benefit, so that we can actually have something tangible.
And that's where I'd like to see some of the homeowners associations, where we have issues in their communities, to kick in for this, because it's helping them as well, helping the rest of the community. And some of these communities and businesses that are Walmart, for instance. We could station an officer at Walmart for shoplifting offenses constantly, and so organizations like that, if there was some way to lean on them to help us with this, let's explore that.
Trustee Provenzis.
I believe you answered one question I had. It would be posted that video surveillance is.
Yes, where the cameras would be located, we would post numerous signs, nice signs, to match the neighborhood, whatnot, but they would say, this area is under 24-hour police surveillance.
For other municipalities that have a camera system, what's the incidence of damage to the cameras then, where people know they're?
I'm not aware of, the cameras are basically put in a location where, they're on buildings and where they can't be accessed. There was an incident in Prospect Heights where a known gang offender gained access to a rooftop and spray painted the camera, which we saw him on another camera.
Okay. Helpful. You didn't know about that one, huh?
Brilliant.
And what would the FOIA impact be on this? I mean, once we have this information, would we be bombarded by FOIA requests to
I'm not aware that it's FOIA-able. I mean, certainly if we capture a snippet of the surveillance activity and we're using that for prosecution, that's available, it's discoverable for defense. But I do not believe there's a FOIA-able ramification of this, of where we would be providing reams and reams of CDs of the ongoing surveillance.
Thank you.
Trustee Brady.
Thank you. I understand the benefits, all the benefits, and there's many of them to this system. Of course, today, videotape's kind of a little bit of a deterrent for the police because they get caught doing things too. But I will never, ever give in to the big brother. I'm sorry. We're individuals. We should go about our business not worrying about who's watching. And we'll just have to do what we have to do to keep these areas safe, but not without a camera.
Chief, let me ask you, the 7 areas that you want to put these in, best of your knowledge in the last calendar year, how many crimes have been in those areas? Is there a number?
I don't know off the top of my head, but there were 3 life-threatening incidents. And, just the residual, the property crime and the quality of life, the broken windows theory, all those issues. But can I quantify them today? No.
Okay, anybody else? Joe?
Do you know the 7 areas, or?
Yes.
Where you're thinking, what are they?
Deputy Chief knows them by heart. I don't recall them by heart, but he could tell you the 7 locations.
It's 3 locations. Mike, come to the mic.
3 locations, 7.
Let me ask this question in response to, do we want to publicize those right now?
I wouldn't.
No,
Well, that's just the problem I have with it, because I understand the point of it, but then it stigmatizes that area. I wouldn't want to live if you put that camera and that sign in my neighborhood, I'd be upset. You know, people driving into your neighborhood to come see you, oh, this is under police surveillance. I understand the effect of it, but I think it has a very, very negative effect on what people are going to perceive of those areas.
The chief and I had this conversation, and I think he said it best, that it goes even back to the Big Brother thing. I think the people that live in those areas know the situation and come to appreciate it, because the Big Brother issue is the only people that believe it's Big Brother are those that are committing the crimes. Everyone else sees it as a safety net. And I just offer that in rebuttal. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. I understand your point of view. You know, if it was on the street in front of my house, I wouldn't be real thrilled. But then again, if there was criminal activity occurring on my street, or I was worried about my children couldn't play outside, or I was worried about that any night my car could be broken into, I would be I'd be less inclined to worry about my civil liberties.
But if I went into that neighborhood looking for a place to live, I'd turn around and go someplace else. I mean, it's that also, but scare away.
There's no doubt. I would go back to saying that I think the neighborhoods
Does it
that
have to be posted?
Yeah,
yes,
it's a legal requirement.
Yeah.
There you go.
I would go back to just saying that these areas that we're talking about, it's common knowledge.
Many of them already have cameras. They have their own. They're just not very adequate. The homeowner associations have some that we'd be replacing with ours. Because we'll have to go in, it would be a partnership with them. They'll have to give us access to their electricity, and we are going to have to put our legal department to work coming up with agreements, because we'll be tapping into their resources. This is just for the hardware and the equipment.
But I think to outsiders too, it might give a different a connotation that it's a high crime community, and I don't feel that way. Even I can guess the areas where these are going to go. I mean, one of them's right by my house. My kids are fine. I don't feel that there's any threatening thing. Yeah, something bad happened there, but that's going to happen. I don't know. I don't like the idea of it, but I understand that you're always doing what you think is best to keep the community safe. So I hope you don't take offense to it.
I take offense to nothing. It's my job is to bring forth ideas and thoughts on how to improve the quality of life from the law enforcement point of view, and it's your position to determine if you want to do that or not.
Trustee Krueger?
Chief actually kind of answered my question, but we spoke about this before, and I know you know the locations that you want to put these cameras. I didn't know if they were going on village-owned property or on private property, and you did address that we'd need some individual agreements with the property owners. So
yeah, the 7 locations we have now built into this proposal, some of them are based, there might not even be the most optimal location, but the most financially feasible because of the line of sight and microwave feedback back to the police station and things like that. And again, this is just, could be step one to a bigger system where other associations, when they see the value of it, and or businesses want to come on board.
Thanks. And to Trustee Lang's point, just while I've got the floor, I like the idea of, if the program is successful, and it'll kind of correct itself over time, wouldn't it? And then if others want to get involved and jump on because it's such a robust system, that there be a revenue stream there that's kind of like membership. You want to get into the security network that we have, that we offer here in the village, then pay your membership fee and get a camera.
Yeah, we would definitely need to look into that, because I don't know the answer as to how that would work as far as buying into the system, but it's certainly a good idea.
Just wanted to show my support for that.
And even the idea of it is kind of funny. Security systems, you see them in areas we're talking about, high crime areas. So the 2 places you see them are high crime areas and the wealthiest of the wealthy areas. That's where you see these kind of systems, right? And it's just an interesting statement.
If I may. The 3 areas that you're talking about are 3 association areas that have been a problem child for the village of Wheeling since I was a child. This is where the problem is. And I think this is where we talk about code enforcement to work with the police department, and you have management companies collecting tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year from property owners to maintain and do what they need to do. Let's be honest. Colonial is a nightmare. Whippletree is a nightmare now. And we got management companies there that refuse to even deal with your staff, Andrew. That has to end. Because these are the guys that aren't here that are allowing what's happening in these communities. I think we need stiffer laws or stiffer enforcement to weed out some of the garbage that's in this town. That's the problem. There's a lot of good people living in Whippletree, a lot of good people living in Cedar Run, a lot of good people living in Colonial. But it's unfortunate management companies who aren't associated here in this community close their eyes to it and all they want are assessment checks. We need to go hard on these guys, like we never have before, and to work with police and enforce. And I think that's where we start. And at the same time, if it is a continuing problem, then Trustee Lang's idea is a great idea. You have a problem here, you will contribute to this. When I hear gunshots in my neighborhood coming from Colonial, I have a problem with that. How do you promote your housing market? How do you promote your neighborhoods to bring young families in? That needs to end. It needs to end now. We've been talking about this since I've been up here. And it's the same three problem child in this community. And you could add stuff to the south. Hunt Club was a problem. That's why we forcefully annexed all that garbage over there too, because it was. But I think it starts with enforcement. It really does. And getting hard and using every possible law that we have regarding these management companies that think all they can do is collect checks and don't have to worry about anything. It's not fair to our fire department, it's not fair to our police department, and it's not fair to the environment we live in. So let's start there and maybe bring this back to us and reach out to those three that I mentioned. I'm not afraid to mention them because it's a fact. And see where we can go from there.
May I ask you a question? One of the things that President Argyris and I talked about earlier in conjunction with this request was to revisit crime-free housing, which addresses some of the things that President Argyris just brought up. Is that something that you would like to see come back to you along with this, and you can, make whatever decisions you need to on those two things separately or in conjunction with each other? Is that something you'd like to see?
I think we need to look at this professionally, and you guys coming back to us to say, here we have some options here. We've worked with all the staffing members, and we've reached out to these management companies. We're getting nowhere, or we got somewhere. And say, hey, here's an idea, guys, what do you want to do? And I think that's something in the first part of 17 that we need to address. Because every year we talk about it, John, and every year it continues to be a bigger problem. And it's not fair to our police department. It's not fair to our fire department. It has to go into an emergency not knowing what's going on over there. And it's the same areas all the time. So enough. Zero tolerance. Seriously, zero tolerance. I deal with the mortgage business with management companies. They're a joke. There's not a good one around. I'm sorry to say it, there aren't. It's all about the money. So let's see what we can come up with. Let's come up with a game plan, and I know you have this board support that we can move forward. But CD, I got news for you. Better work with our legal staff and with our police department and figure out a way to get stricter, harder, meaner, I don't care. Do it. Because it's not fair. There's good people living in these communities, and they fare for where they're, with their kids. Go to the swimming pool at Cedar Run and you're afraid to go? Really? Use a swimming pool at Whippletree, you're afraid to use it? Really? And to see all the code violations around some of these homes over there? And good people that spend the money to care about their home, living next to that? It's got to end. It's got to end. Because it got better, it's getting worse. So, anyway. So I'm going to take it as a no for the cameras right now, and we can go to the next pink slip.
The next pink slip is page 210, which is the electric emergency vehicle. This remained unsigned. Chief, correct me where I'm wrong. I didn't sign it because you will note that the funding source for this is the drug and seizure fund. So I just didn't want that to get confused with general fund expenditures. I think the answer is that they will buy, at least in my opinion, they will buy the vehicle and it will be paid for through our seizure funds, correct?
Correct.
So this will remain a no, but everyone understands that they're going to get the vehicle because it's paid for through a different funding source than is part of our operating budget.
Good.
Besides,
All in.
it'd be highly unfair for us to get Jamie a vehicle when Keith has been asking for one for 20 years and we keep turning him down.
The chief and I have had that discussion as well.
He's going to get one.
And he is going to present the Gator to the Foreign Fire Insurance Fund, and hopefully they will fund the expense.
Well, he doesn't want to pay for the defibs.
That's exactly.
But here's another example of a great tool that they can go into some of these housing projects with.
You can have it on Monday, he can have it
Yeah,
on Tuesday.
They should. All right, so you don't need any consensus on this?
No, I just wanted the board to be aware that we're going to buy it. It's going to remain a pink sheet, but we're going to buy it. The next item is page 213, truck-mounted high-pressure sewer cleaner. This has been a topic of some heated discussion over the past several weeks, and I think the director has and is continuing to gather some data for me to make sure that this is a necessary piece of equipment. While he does that, there have been meetings with the finance department to discuss the purchase of this equipment. And I am happy to say that through some of our department conversations, we believe that in FY17 there will be a number of projects that were budgeted that will have revisions to either the scope of the project or the funding source of the project that will allow those funds to go to pay for this piece of equipment. So I guess what I'm saying is for now, I would ask, and Director Janik agrees, that we don't have to say yes to this today because we expect to find monies to pay for it in the coming fiscal year. I will note, though, that even if we can fund the initial cost, be aware that we will need to increase our SURF contributions accordingly in order to pay for its replacement in what I assume is 20 years or whatever the life expectancy of the vehicle is. So did I misrepresent our conversations, Mark?
That's correct.
Are they going to have special training for this truck?
Any new piece of equipment
Training would be good.
Is there extra money for training for this, or are we just going to go gun-ho?
No, we will be trained correctly.
Properly?
It's a stronger.
Jeff? I'm not even asking him. Jeff? Thank you.
Excuse me.
Does the training come with the purchase price?
Yes, it does.
So there's no extra cost for the training?
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's
Did
the
I
answer.
already
What do
experience
we-
this piece of equipment? Yeah.
What do we currently use instead of this piece of equipment? So how are we?
We have a standalone, it's about 20 years old, and it breaks down a lot. And this would replace that vehicle, but the vehicle that we have currently is not a SURF vehicle.
Why isn't the current one a SURF vehicle?
Long answer, but generally speaking, at the time that we have an existing combination vehicle that does jetting and vacuuming, and at that time it was decided about 10 years ago that we would not need another piece of equipment, and we would let the existing standalone jetter end its life and then wouldn't be replaced. Since that time, we have had operational changes in our department, and we used the standalone jetter numerous times a week.
Do other communities have this piece of equipment?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Would we be able to work with other communities and perhaps through an intergovernmental agreement, if we ever got this, do their sewer cleaning?
Doubtful. I mean, we have approximately 180 miles, or maybe 190 miles of both sanitary and storm sewer piping that we need to keep clean and without obstacles. And we've been spending a lot more time removing those obstacles, and we've had a lot of success in reducing some of our issues relative to ponding, stormwater ponding in streets and that sort of thing by cleaning on a consistent basis.
What's the life expectancy of this?
20 years.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Ken?
Why can't we just simply make this a surfable item?
We will be in the.
Well, we will, but the request is for $250,000, so.
So if we make it a SURF, then we wouldn't have to approve $250,000, you just take it out of SURF, right?
You also would have to wait 20 years to buy the piece of equipment. SURF does not purchase new equipment. SURF only purchases replacement equipment, existing equipment. So first you make the purchase of the new equipment, then from that point on, based on the life expectancy of that piece of equipment, you contribute a percentage of its value so that, plus an increase, so that you can replace it at the end of its life cycle.
And we can't work around that.
It's
Well-
Kirky County. Kirky? Is that your word?
It sets a really dangerous precedent, because if we start buying new equipment to add to the fleet and using replacement dollars to pay for it, then we will be short when we need to replace the existing equipment we have. So we've always had a policy of if it's a new piece of equipment, it comes from the general fund or the water and sewer fund or wherever the appropriate fund is. And then we start to set aside the money necessary to replace it in a kind of depreciation sort of way.
Right.
So way back when our ancestors decided that we don't need two pressure sewer routers, that's it. We got one, now we need two. It just doesn't make any sense how this happened. I can understand what you're saying, but it just doesn't make any sense. And John, I'll go along with what you said about purchasing it.
All right, so you don't need an
Thank you.
answer.
So we will be coming back to you.
Doesn't need an answer on this.
No.
Correct. We will be coming back to you, so expect it in the beginning of FY17. And what we'll be saying is, this is a budget increase, however, it's going to be offset by savings from other projects, so that the net impact should be zero. That is the goal, but that's how it will come back to you in FY17.
Okay. Next one.
The next item is page 215, hook lift dump body. Again, this is one of those, I don't disagree with the explanation, but I go back to what we said at the beginning of this as far as having a very small surplus and simply prioritizing against other needs. While there is benefit, and I see it, and of course Mark can elaborate on it, I couldn't sign off on it based on other needs. If there's anything, Mark, you'd like to add in order to describe exactly what this is and give the board an opportunity to say yes or no.
The only thing I want to say is that this hook dump, or this hook truck, which we purchased, that would have multiple uses. Right now we're using the truck specifically for snow and ice control. It's got a tank on it, which is for anti-icing, and it also has a salt box on it for salting. This purchase for the dump body would allow this truck to be used by more than just for or for snow fighting. You'll be able to have it for the utility division or the street division as well, not for snow fighting, but for spoils. It's an extra dump truck. That's what this is for. So it's not a new vehicle, it's another piece of equipment for our existing hook truck.
So it'd make it a year-round vehicle?
That's correct.
Rather than a winter vehicle?
That's right.
Ken?
Yeah, that's pretty cheap for a vehicle that we'll be using maybe about 9-10 months out of the year, instead of having it parked all summer. I don't know.
Yeah.
I agree.
Consensus?
It's not a vehicle, though. It is
No, it's
something that's attached to the vehicle.
Right, it's equipment
Changeover.
You're converting it to something
Right.
else that you can use year-round, which I think makes sense. Dave?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Joe?
That price, get two of them.
Don't give him ideas.
Well, he's getting four.
Oh, there you go.
The dump bodies, right?
No, it's one dump body divided by 4 accounts.
Oh, by 4 accounts, I'm sorry. Ray?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Myself, yeah.
The irony of the last item, page 216, is that I asked for it. This is for landscaping for this building. It simply needs improvement. That's the answer. It needs some replacement items based on the last 8 years from when they were originally installed, when this building was built. Plus, I think there's a lot that can be done with this building. Obviously, this is a focal point not only for the community, but for what is now becoming a much larger municipal campus. But much like my explanation for the previous item, it's hard for me to justify the expense based on the need. So do I think this is a good idea? I absolutely do. But it is $50,000, and with a surplus as small as ours was, I didn't see, I didn't feel that I could sign it and wanted to bring it to you.
Can I give you my opinion of this? I think it's a great idea. But I think with the anticipation of all the construction that's going to be going on here with the town center and the use of the community boulevard and everything, I would wait. Just because of the truck traffic and everything that's going to happen. I think Lori and you guys have done a tremendous job doing with less and making it look real nice. I know we got hit hard with the roses, bushes, I mean, hundreds of them I know you lost in the past, and it's because of the environment, I get it. But whatever you can do to make the place look beautiful like you do every year, I think we need to wait a year or two just to see how all this traffic and everything that's happening here, that's going to be going through this campus for the next 2 years. So, and with that, I would love to see a major renovation of what's going on here.
Completely agree, and I should say that my comments are not a reflection of street and forestry.
No, I know.
So, just to be clear, but I think that's an excellent idea.
Everybody kind of agree with me on that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. So the only increase we have so far is $16,000 for Mr. Janik.
And the 19, so it's the white sheet that was this one.
Oh, I
That
got
was
the
added.
106. Yeah, okay,
Yep.
plus the 19. So it's
Is that-
about $35,000.
Is that correct, Michael? It's the two, it's this white sheet? Okay.
Right. So 19.3 added to that.
Can I go back to the landscaping for a second?
Sure.
I know we talked about in our strategic plan about we're doing new signage for the entryways of the village.
And it's in the budget.
And so when you, but landscaping for that area as well, I'm not 100% sure that's in there. When you come southbound on Milwaukee Avenue and enter Wheeling, you see the sign in the median, and the median itself, it makes a huge statement of this community.
Sure.
And I know we talked in the strategic plan about signage in other areas, but did we talk about landscaping to that effect, median and so on, where we'd, again, to the west, make a statement, to the east, make a statement, and so on, entering this community that you're here, this is Wheeling, and, it looks nice.
I think the answer is both yes and no.
Okay.
As it relates to landscaping around the signs, the answer is yes. If you're talking about additional landscaping in areas just to beautify the larger area around the sign, then the answer is no. But all landscaping associated with the new signs is yes. And I would put that island that you used an example in front of the Ram as that would be landscaping around a sign. So anything like that is included, yes.
But we would, we're, with that, and I don't know, I'm getting off track on this, but are we working towards a program similar to Milwaukee Avenue where we're looking at medians and looking at ways to improve that entryway?
As they relate to the signs, yes. If you want to expand landscaping in general, then I think we need to have that conversation. There's a lot of talk about maintenance when it comes to those things. So I think we would have to have that talk if you're talking about expanding the scope of what we have for landscaping now. But the landscaping design is an integral part to the sign design. So as those two relate to each other, the answer is absolutely yes. If you're looking for other kind of garden type things, then we would have to talk about that because that's not included.
Thank you.
Thanks. What else, John?
That's it. Michael, do you have a final number as far as what the surplus is at this point? 84,254 was the number that Michael said. So I guess to answer your question, if there are no other questions, then no, there's nothing else.
Any questions from the board?
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Good job. Really, good job, everyone. Thank you. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Papantos, second by trustee Lang. Roll call?
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
President Argyros?
Yes. Thank you.